Funny story from our jump school. So the guys that we went through jump school with, the instructors, they were the same ones that Tiger Woods went through that class with.
Oh, yeah.
And so do you remember when he got that knee injury that lingered for the rest of his career?
Yeah.
That was from fucking PLF jumping. Like,
it's so dumb.
So Tiger Woods, if you didn't know about this guy had a huge heart-on and wanted to be a Navy SEAL his whole life. But he was so good at golf that how do you're like the greatest in the world. You have no choice. But he always wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So he somehow made friends within the community and was able to not class up, but join the class when they would go to different training iterations and whatnot. And so when we were going through jump school, there's a picture of that class with Tiger Woods right in the middle and all the instructors. Funny. And it's like their jump class, photo or whatever. And, and they're like, he got that fucking knee.
But he hurt himself.
And you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollar decision. And that knee injury stuck with him forever. I don't know if he ever actually fully healed up from it, to be honest.
Yeah, and they didn't. There wasn't much publicity about it because I don't know that like Nike and Rolex and his other big sponsors would have been too happy about their like $100 million athlete jumping out of here.
I should cut that out. I don't know.
If you've had the vaccine, particularly if it's Pfizer or Moderna, you have this in you. If you've had the PCR testing and you had that hydrogel that contained the graphene oxide, you have this in you. Once we realized that this is what we were facing, we were like, well, what are we going to do now?
I know you guys are able to find and remove some of these objects that are implanted in people, but with this newest stuff, you're saying it's at the nanoscale. So how are you going to remove stuff at the nanoscale?
With the nanotech, there is a solution, high-grade zeolite. Zeolite is usually found in it's sourced at two locations, usually blue zones, areas where humans tend to live far longer and healthier. It has to have volcanic activity where the diatomaceous earth and the sea meet, and that's where they get this pure high-grade zeolite, which has a negative charge to it. When it's integrated into the human body, what it does is it binds to the graphene oxide, and so they've done studies now where they did a baseline, exposed people to the graphene oxide, and then what they see is that after about 90 days, it'll be down to a minimal level. Most people who are on this right now are saying they're having significant improvements in how they're feeling, the symptoms that they're getting, and it's as much as over 50%.
Hey, you guys. So this is episode 28. We got Karl Gustavson.
Yep.
How do you pronounce it?
Gustavson, that's right.
Yeah, I like Gustavson.
Yes.
Gustavson sounds better, but we'll go with Gustavson. All right. He goes by Gus. This is a former SEAL Team 6 Silver Squadron, correct?
Silver, yep.
Silver Squadron guy. Just retired last year with 22 years under his belt. He's doing a lot of great things right now. Thank you for coming on the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking about catching up on some crazy boot camp stories with so a lot of times like there's regular Navy boot camp but within boot camp, everybody has to go to the same boot camp. It's in Great Lakes, Illinois. But if your plan is to become a Navy SEAL or a SWIC or an EOD, they have specific classes where they'll try to group you up with a bunch of guys that are similar to you. Otherwise, you kind of get a mixed bag of regular naval fleet, which they're not bad guys. You're not going to get the level of training you need to get ready to go to pre-buds and then buds and then on to SQT and become a Navy SEAL. So, I was telling Gus when I was going through boot camp, we got lucky and they brought a couple actual Navy SEALs that were still enlisted at the time, and they brought them to our class. This is like your prototypical Hollywood movie where you're in the barracks and you got everybody sleeping on bunks and everything has to be perfect and you're getting yelled at. So it's that kind of environment, and they bring in these two Navy SEAls, and you could tell they didn't want to be there. This is like their shore duty, and they just they had so much better things to do, but they're like, okay, yeah, we're here. What do you guys want to talk about? Ask us any questions. You got 10 minutes. And of course, that one fucking guy goes, should we be taking cold showers to get ready for buds? And the guy starts laughing. He just looks at him and he goes, listen, you can punch yourself in the face as many times as you want to get ready for a fight. He goes, but when you get in a fight and get punched in the face, it's still going to hurt, right? And the guy's like, oh, fuck, yeah. So, that's wisdom from a real Navy SEAL there. It's just going to suck either way. There's nothing you could do to prepare for the suck, and you're fully well-versed in this.
Yeah, like I was saying, when I was at boot boot camp, you know, we were getting ready, and one of the dive motivators at the time was a guy named Chris Cassidy, who then later, we didn't know at the time, he was getting ready to get out and go to NASA and become an astronaut, which he did. But I remember as a dive motivator, you know, we would go to those morning PTs, and it's all the special programs guys, the guys that are trying to be divers or EOD or SEALs. And Chris Cassidy's one of the guys running us through the PTs. And I remember he'd sit there and say things like, "You're all going to quit anyways. You know, why are you getting up early to come to these PTs?" And it was that first sort of like filter of like who really wants to be here. Because to go to those special programs PTs, you had to get up earlier than everybody else in your boot camp division. You had to go all the way down to the other end of base to where the pool was at. And then you had these two SEALs sit there, and they were kind of these like grumpy old men who were like, "You're all going to quit." I remember doing a ton of flutter kicks, a ton of breath hold stuff, and just feeling like it was the coolest thing. And here were these guys. And then I ran into him at a Navy SEAL Foundation event about a month ago out in Colorado.
Did he remember you?
He did not remember me, although I would have just been a face in the crowd for all the people that he put through there. But I told him, you know, I went through boot camp in April of 2002, and I said, "You were the dive motivator." And I remember just being super jazzed about the fact that there was a real SEAL there, and all the things he went on to do. It was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because when you're going through boot camp and you see your first Navy SEAL, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
they might as well walk on water at that point.
Yeah.
They are everything that you aspire to be.
Yeah. I remember there was the two enlisted, you know, Navy SEALs that hung out with us that day. I remember the coolest thing ever. We're walking. I think we went to the pool, and then we were waiting outside and ranking up before we were going to move to chow or something like that. And I remember there was like an officer driving by in his vehicle, and you know, like they're so strict with the rules, and everybody stands at attention, and everybody stands at attention. And the guy was right in front of me, and he goes, "Everybody's at attention except for this dude, not saluting, not fucking doing anything." And I'm like, "That's a bad motherfucker. I want to be like that guy."
The rules don't apply to that guy.
Yeah, fuck that officer.
Yeah,
that was my first taste of like
funny.
enlisted guys just being like,
funny.
"Nah, how about I'm not going to respect that."
Yep.
So why don't you just tell the viewers about your background, kind of like where you grew up, how you got inspired. I know you were in college, I believe, when 9/11 happened, and that kind of like sent you down this whole new life path that turned into an incredible career in the teams. So why don't you just take us back to the beginning? Where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town in Colorado. You know, a funny story, actually. I grew up in a small town called Grand Junction. For those of you who know, it's like on I-70. It's like the stopover between Denver and Salt Lake. Not a very big town, small graduating class, but two of the guys from my graduating high school class ended up going to DEVGRU, becoming SEALs, going to DEVGRU later on. One came in right out of high school, and then, you know, I joined post 9/11. But the odds of that, I feel like, are pretty minuscule, you know, of two people from this small class of like 300 kids. So graduate high school, didn't really have my sights set on joining the military at all. You know, I grew up LDS. I was a Mormon kid. So out of high school, I went to do a mission in Brazil. So I go down from 1998 to 2000. I go down. I live in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, do this 2-year mission, come back. And one of the things that really stuck with me about my time in Brazil was just living in this, it was my first time out of the country, really, my first time seeing the way that other people live, and just remembering the idea that these people didn't have really, there was no chance of them improving their life or their situation. It's like sort of a, you know, they're happy people, but there's not a lot of opportunity, right? For your average everyday person, they're just going to grind it out until the day that they die. And so coming back from there and just sort of feeling like we live in this land of opportunity, really, like just a very blessed existence, privileged existence that we live as Americans. And then in the wake of that, you know, I get back in February, March of 2000, and then a year later, 9/11 happens. And I was still kind of riding that wave of just feeling like very patriotic and appreciative of everything that we have as Americans. And then so 9/11 happens, and I'm a college kid, and I'm stuck with this crossroads decision of like, what do I do with this?
What year in college were you?
It was my second year of college.
Okay.
Yep. And so, you know, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking I'm young, I'm able-bodied. Here's this situation where like our country's just been attacked for the first time since Pearl Harbor. And I'm like, I can't just sit here and do nothing. And so I'm like, I remember in the weeks after 9/11, I wrote a letter to the president. It was President Bush at the time, wrote a letter saying, you know, expressing support as a patriotic citizen. And I thought, that's not enough. There has to be something else that I can do. And so probably, I would say 3 to 4 weeks after 9/11, when all the kind of the fanfares sort of dying down and everything. And I was like, you know what, I got to do something. And so I dropped out of my college classes and I went and talked to the Navy recruiter. I said, hey, and I already kind of knew what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to just go be a grunt enlisted person in some service. I was like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to go tip of the spear, forefront of the fight. And so I talked to the Army recruiter about possibly being a Ranger. And then I talked to the Navy recruiter about SEALs, and I was a swimmer in high school, swam competitively for 4 years. And so that just seemed like the best shoe that fit.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You got that kind of background.
Yeah, I got that background. And so that was it. And then, 6 months later, I'm enlisted in boot camp and going to Great Lakes, which we called great mistakes at the time, and then really questioning my life decisions and thinking, was this the right thing?
Did you stay at did you go through pre-buds? Or
so like you mentioned, there were a certain group of guys, and it was right around the time that I was going through boot camp that they started doing the Special Programs Division.
Okay.
But it was like the first or second one was like just going through at the same time that I went through. So a lot of guys that I end up going to buds with went through a Special Programs Division at boot camp. I did not. I was actually in a 50 state flags performing division. And so with a bunch of like regular Joe people who were going to go in the Fleet Navy.
You're like, I do not belong
And
here.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here or how I got picked to do this 50 state flags thing. But we used to have to march at like the other boot camp divisions graduations, like hold the flags. And so I had like the Ohio flag, and
Jesus Christ.
it was like very super Fleet Navy thing to do. And, but I would watch, we'd go to the special programs PTs in the morning, and I would see all the guys who were in the special programs division, like that special 300 division or whatever, that they were all going to go be something. Mm-hmm. And I remember tying in with those guys and being like, this is the division I should have been in, but it was like the first of its kind. And so they didn't, they hadn't put me in there, but I came in under SEAL Challenge, under the SEAL Challenge contract, which for those of you listeners that don't know, back then there used to be a contract that you would sign when you came into the Navy that said, hey, sign this contract, we'll guarantee you a shot at buds. Basically, if you pass the physical, if you pass the PFT, you'll get a shot to go to buds and a spot at buds. And then if you make it through Hell Week, you get something like a $5,000 kicker or something like that. But that was it. And then if you don't make it, have fun in the Fleet.
Yeah.
So it was a very flimsy guarantee that I came in on, but the recruiter sold it to me, and I said, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm not going to quit, so here we go.
So you went straight from boot camp to buds?
So I boot camp to A school. I was a sonar tech.
Oh, okay. So you did 2 years
So I did,
in the regular Fleet?
No. I just did the A school.
Oh, okay.
So before SEALs became a rate,
I see.
you used to have to go get a job, basically. You went to an A school. So there were a handful of what they call SEAL source ratings. So it was like quartermaster, gunner's mate, aviation ordnance, all these different rates that you could be that then would pipeline you to go to buds. Okay. And so sonar tech was one of them, and sonar tech was the only one that was in San Diego. And so I was like, all right, well, that'll position me in the right place. I'll already be in the right city. It's a 10-week A school. I'll go learn to be a sonar tech. And kind of the thinking of the military at the time, or thinking of the Navy, was we'll give these guys a job, since 80% of them are going to quit SEAL training anyway. Mm-hmm. We'll give them a job, and then when they quit, they'll have a job in the Navy.
Right.
And so fortunately for me, I never got to do the job that I went to A school for. I went to 10 weeks to learn to identify the pings and dings that underwater vehicles make, identify Akula class submarines and whatever else. And then I went to buds after that. So 10 weeks of boot camp, 10 weeks of A school, and then buds class 245.
245. So for reference, I was buds class 278. What's the difference in years there? Like 4 years, 3, 4 years, something like that?
Yeah. So it'd been 30 classes difference, 5 classes a year.
6 years?
Yeah, 6 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I went through I graduated in 2003. It's 2002, 2003.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I came in 2009. So how big was your buds class when you guys classed up?
We had 179 to start, and then we graduated 25.
Jesus Christ. That was a rough one. Was it winter?
It was, no. So I started with buds class 244. I got rolled for stress fractures. That was a winter class. And then the class that I ended up in was like a spring class. So we did Hell Week in April. But it was cold. It was cold enough that it hailed on us. It hailed on us during our Hell Week in San Diego. For those of you who don't know, the lore is that the weather in San Diego is beautiful almost every day of the year, except for when there's a Hell Week going on. And then it's like the weather just manages to get cold and windy and rainy and nasty. And for us, I think it was Tuesday morning, Monday night, it hailed on us.
Well, the weird thing about San Diego is like no matter the hottest day of the year, the water is still freezing cold. Like it's just like you're like in an ice bath. It's like, how is it this fucking cold? It's like 95 degrees outside. It doesn't make any sense.
And it's crazy. I did my whole SEAL career on the East Coast, where the swing in water temperature is like, it's like 85 degrees. The Atlantic is like 85 degrees in the summertime, and it's like 45 degrees in the winter. But in San Diego, the Pacific is like 48 to 52 degrees all the time. It's always cold.
Yeah, it's miserable. And then so you make it through BUDS. Did you guys have SQT? I'm sure you did back then, right? Went from BUDS to SQT and then your team. And then did you choose SDV teams?
No. So my class, we graduated 25 guys, and of those 25, I want to say 12 or 13 got orders to SDVs, either SDV 1 or SDV 2. So it was like half the class.
Wow.
And I don't know, it was just needs of the Navy. That was what came up at that point. And there was, a handful of guys who were lucky and got orders to just East Coast regular teams. I had actually requested all West Coast teams. I had family out in the San Diego and LA area. And I was like, well, I'll just stay out here. So I requested, like, my dream sheet coming out of BUDS was like 1-3-5. Those were the teams I wanted, 1-3-5, and just put that down on my dream sheet. And, and then I got my orders, and they're like, you're going to SDV Team 2. And I was like, what is an SDV?
Yeah, explain for the viewers what an SDV is.
So an SDV is a 25-foot manned submersible, flooded submersible. Well, it's basically like it has a pilot and navigator seat in the front, and they pilot this thing around. It's got 4 seats in the back for like a surveillance and reconnaissance element, or an OTB element, an over the beach element, or an element that's going to do a swimmer assault or tag a ship or something like that. So it's a really cool capability in theory, but in practice, it's 2 guys or 6 guys in this flooded submersible underwater in cold, dark, wet conditions for, I think the longest dive that we did was 13 hours.
Wow.
So
I've heard of much longer.
and they do longer dives than that, but you would either dive on open circuit until you got into like the danger area, and then you'd go on closed circuit, or you dive on a mixed gas rig. So you have very long, sustainable dive tables. So you could be underwater breathing on those rigs for a long time.
And for the viewers, like, because most people will only ever do open circuit scuba diving, where you see bubbles coming out and they float to the surface. Looks really pretty. Well, what we use in the teams is a closed circuit system. I think it was designed in like Russia or some shit, like way back.
Germany,
or Germany, whatever. Yeah. It's called the DEVGRU system, and this thing it's called Sodasorb, is what the substances that they put in here. And so when you're exhaling, you have 2 hoses that are coming out of your mouthpiece. One is for inhaling, one is for exhaling. So when you exhale, it goes out one side, goes through this thing that basically looks like kitty litter, right? Yeah. And then that siphons out the carbon, or I don't know what it is. And then you breathe in whatever's left, and it's horrible. You get used to it. You do adjust to it eventually, but at the beginning, it feels like you're taking like a third of a full breath each time. So you're not getting like your full lungs filled. And I don't know. The only way I could explain it would be like trying to breathe into like a blanket or like a brown paper bag, and just doing that sustainably for 3 to 4 plus hours. And it's a weird thing.
And you're doing it while you're finning. But the rig is finicky enough that it can only clean so much carbon off of the CO2 that you're exhaling at a time. So in theory, you can overbreathe your rig. Oh, yeah. So you're down there and you're trying to fin out, and you're trying to keep your steady kick pace, and you're doing this physical exertion. But at the same time, you're taking these half breaths, and you're worried about overbreathing your rig. So you're trying not to breathe too much out into it. And you have a finite amount of pure O2 in your little O2 bottle that you're breathing in. So it's like this very complex system. And then on top of that, if there's any amount of water gets into that Sodasorb, it becomes caustic, and you can inhale it, and it'll, burn your esophagus and lungs and all these different things called a caustic cocktail. So there's all these, things to get concerned about while you're breathing this rig in a danger area, conducting these high risk operations.
Yeah.
And
on top of an AGE possibility. So arterial gas embolism, I believe it was called.
Yep.
And that's where if you basically rise up too quickly, you have to go up very slowly when you're on compressed air, and it's very sensitive once you get down to like 20 feet, I believe, and lower. It becomes very dangerous if you were to like try to, rise to the surface very quickly. And so, we were always praying somebody in our class would get a caustic cocktail because they would have to
so the dive could be over.
You don't.
No, it's a twisted mindset where you're like, hey, somebody have something happen that's not catastrophic, but so that we can end the.
Who's the youngest guy here?
End these dives. So, and it's like when you see in the movies and you're like, oh, these guys are wearing this very cool high-speed rig that contains all the bubbles. So there's no visible signature on the surface and everybody's like, ooh, this is a very cool capability. And it is cool. But the amount of ass pain that goes into making sure that rig doesn't flood, doesn't get overbreathed, has enough O2, has enough, and you really only have 4 hours on that rig. Mm-hmm. So you're in this finite dive table of when we can go conduct this operation, how much of this window that we have. And there's a lot of complexity to it. So
what do you do when you got to take a shit on a 13-hour dive?
You don't. Ideally, you hold it. I mean, it's like, and I've seen, you're in sometimes very turbulent waters. And so the SDV, because it's flooded, you feel all the ups and downs. You feel sort of the motion of the ocean while you're in the SDV. So guys that get motion sick, I've seen guys on a closed circuit, full face mask, vomit into their mask. And it just goes down into the rig. And then, or they try and like purge as much as they can, kind of pull the mask out, throw up into the water a little bit, close the mask, and then, do a mask clearing, like inhale. And then you just continue on with the dive.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some pretty miserable stuff.
For regular fleet guys that are listening, this is why we get special pay. Okay? Yeah. I've heard so many guys talk shit. Oh, why do they get dive pay and we don't get dive pay? Yeah. This is why. Fucking puking in your own fucking masks and gurgling that shit and not being able to take a shit. This is why.
For $200 a month. Dive pay.
Those shit, dude.
That you get. Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yep.
So how long were you at SDV too?
So I was at SDV for 6 years. Got there shortly after, went through, BUDS, SQT, and then back in the day we used to go to Army Airborne School. Did you catch Army Airborne School?
No.
So we used to go to Army Airborne School in Fort Benning, Georgia, which is basically 3 weeks of learning how to fall down. So it's like they teach you over and over and over. You're jumping into a rock pit, learn how to fall down, do what they call a parachute landing fall, a PLF.
Right, PLF.
And then to go do at the end of that 5 static line parachute jumps, which every one of those is just like a leg break waiting to happen.
We did have to do that, but we did in San Diego.
You guys, yeah. You guys must have been like one of the earlier classes to do them in San Diego. So we did that, and then I went to SDV school at the end of SDV school. So this had been like late 2003, early 2004. I think probably May 2004. Checked into SDVs, and then I was at SDVs from 2004 to 2009.
Okay. Funny story from our jump school. So the guys that we went through jump school with, the instructors, they were the same ones that Tiger Woods went through that class with.
Oh, yeah.
And so do you remember when he got that knee injury that lingered for the rest of his career?
Yeah.
That was from fucking PLF jumping. Like,
it's so dumb.
So Tiger Woods, if you didn't know about this guy had a huge heart-on and wanted to be a Navy SEAL his whole life. But he was so good at golf that how do you're like the greatest in the world. You have no choice. But he always wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So he somehow made friends within the community and was able to not class up, but join the class when they would go to different training iterations and whatnot. And so when we were going through jump school, there's a picture of that class with Tiger Woods right in the middle and all the instructors. Funny. And it's like their jump class, photo or whatever. And, and they're like, he got that fucking knee.
But he hurt himself.
And you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollar decision. And that knee injury stuck with him forever. I don't know if he ever actually fully healed up from it, to be honest.
Yeah, and then there wasn't much publicity about it because I don't know that like Nike and Rolex and his other big sponsors would have been too happy about their like $100 million athlete jumping out here.
I should cut that out. I don't know. I thought it'd be pretty common knowledge by now.
But he was, obviously he grew up in Southern California. Father was a Army vet, Vietnam era.
Damn.
And so he loved military. And so for the people that don't know, he loved military, specifically loved the SEAL teams, and came down and toured the Buds facility a number of times. And he would come watch the classes and then eventually convince them to let him jump in on certain iterations and, do the skydiving block, or he did some pool stuff with one of the classes, and he did, got to run on the beach with some of the classes when they were doing like boat stuff and whatever.
Have you seen his son? His son's a pretty good golfer, I heard.
I haven't, but I would imagine the apple doesn't fall far from the tree where that's concerned. He's probably
his
learning the
son's
ways.
Not bad.
Yeah.
We might have a second coming of Tiger Woods in this world. I don't know. You got any good crazy Bud stories? Any good quitter stories?
The thing that I remember is we had one night in particular, and it's kind of like when you're going through Hell Week, especially, it's very like front heavy. Like a lot of people quit Hell Week Sunday night, Monday night into Tuesday. By the time you get to Wednesday, pretty much if you made it through to Wednesday, most guys are going to stick it out.
Yeah.
But we had like Monday night. So we got through, did Hell Week breakout, Sunday night. Sunday's the typical bad stuff. Monday is, a long, hard day. And then Monday night, we roll into Monday night, and we'd run all the way down to the elephant cages. We did the longest mile. So carry the boats, drop the boats, run back a mile, carry the logs, the whole deal. Go all the way down to the elephant cages, all the way to those concrete bunkers down there. And we're eating dinner in one of those concrete bunkers. And it's cold outside. It's overcast. We all know what's going to happen. You're going to eat this cold MRE, which totally sucks. So morale is already like down, right? And all the IBS, all the inflatable boats are outside, and they're turned over the way we used to do for chows. And we're inside eating, and all of a sudden we hear it start to hail. And you can hear the hail pellets dropping, like hitting the boat. So it's like pink, 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 pink. And, it's picking up. And so you see guys kind of start poking their heads around, and they're looking outside, and you see everybody was already a little demoralized because it's only Monday. You got 4 more days with no sleep. You're eating this cold MRE. And then you see guys start getting up and lining up at the bell. And they always carried the bell with us everywhere. The bell, you ring it 3 times, you ring out, and you're done. And so the instructors are like, here we go. And I think we had, we already didn't have, I think we had something like 55 guys start Hell Week of the 179 guys we had in our class. I think 55 or 60 started Hell Week. 17 guys quit at that chow.
No shit.
17 guys stood up, lined up, and went to the bell and quit. And it was like, and you could just see it on their faces, right? It's like between we're already cold, the misery of eating cold MREs, the fact that we're like the sun's just setting, so we're just about to go into nighttime, which is always the worst, and this hail, and guys realizing we're going to have to get out and carry the boats and logs the other 7 miles back down the beach in the hail.
In wet sand.
Yeah. And for some guys, it was just like too much, and they just lined up. And I mean, some of the dudes that I would like on day one of Buds, you look around the class and you're like, that dude's rock solid. There's no way that guy quits. And there were guys that lined up at that bell that I was like, holy cow, I can't believe that dude's about to quit right now.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. Like, but that's motivation.
It's motivation,
right?
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, I made it.
You're like, I made it past that where that guy made it to. And the guys that you really thought, and then you look around at some of the guys that are just, you could read it on their faces, and you look around and some guys, it's just that crestfallen look of like, I can't handle this anymore. And then some guys you see that they just suck it up in that moment. They embrace the suck, we like to say, and they just put their head down over their cold chili mac or whatever. And they're just like, fuck it. Yeah. Here we go. You know what I mean? It's like, and you really see that. And you look around at some of those guys, and I hate to even say this to my Buds classmates, I apologize, but there were guys that I would not have thought that was going to be the guy who made it through that moment. But in those moments, you look around and you see that resolve. Yeah. And you're like, okay, maybe there's something I don't know about that guy.
Well, and it makes sense too, because at that young of an age, you're not a good judge of character. You're really not. You judge everybody based off of surface level interactions. Yep. And like, oh, dude, we went to the same high, or we lived in the same town. You drive the same truck I do. We're gonna be best boys.
Does he look tough? Is he a good runner? He's probably tough. Yeah.
Do you really know him? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same thing here, man. Like whenever we classed up. We had a huge class, like 250 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And there was guys that were like Olympic athletes, pro athletes, or semi-pro athletes, and from all over. And I remember walking in there like, fuck. And I didn't do any studying beforehand besides watching a couple Charlie Sheen movies. And I think I read a Marcinko book. And I was like,
Rogue Warrior.
I get this. This is it. And then I get there and it's, I mean, these guys were way prepared. They were like taking their boots to the ocean and soaking them in their socks and
breaking them in,
breaking all this stuff in. And I'm like, I ain't doing none of this shit. What am I?
Yeah.
I'm so overmatched right now. But those are all the guys that quit.
Did you have one of those moments where you were like, what am I doing here?
Exactly. I did. Yeah. No, that was pretty much it because they knew everything that was going to happen in buds. They knew like which evolution was coming next, what was on this day, what was on that day. And I realized I did zero prep work at all. Like I didn't even try to cram at the end. I just didn't do anything.
Didn't do it.
I just knew I was going to finish and that's all I knew. Yeah. But what I figured out after the fact is all the people that were doing all that prep work, they psyched themselves out because they knew what was left.
Yeah. Here's a classic story. So we had a guy, I won't mention his name, but he was a Buds returnee. He was a fleet returnee. He'd been at Buds once before, didn't make it, wasn't a very good runner. So he'd gone down, he'd done some time down in, I think, Guantanamo Bay as a security guard. He was an MA.
Oh, I was going to say.
He didn't. Yeah, it was in Guantanamo Bay. He was an MA down there. So he came back, and this dude knew everything about Buds. He knew the Buds cadences. He knew every evolution as it was going to come. He knew all the standards. He knew the instructors' names. Some of the instructors who were our Buds instructors had been in Buds with him. Mm-hmm. And he used to sleep on his floor. You know, we had beds, but he would like make his bed, pull the corners really tight, safety pin it underneath, and then he would sleep on the floor because he said made him harder and stronger.
Jesus Christ.
He took cold showers. He surf tortured himself. This is the guy who was like everything he could do that would like toughen him up. Mm. He did all that stuff. Mm. He ate cold MREs in his room instead of going to the chow hall on the weekends and stuff like that. Everything that he thought could make him harder. And it doesn't. I mean, it's like, maybe mentally it preps you a little bit, but he quit. Yeah. He still quit.
Yeah.
And then there were guys, guys like you and me, like I showed up, 9/11 happens. I know very little about the SEAL teams, except that it's the tip of the spear. I joined the Navy on a SEAL Challenge contract and I made it through Buds.
Yeah.
It was like, I didn't know what was coming. In fact, the week before we classed up, so we were in PTR&R, the Discovery Channel series had just come out, the Class 234 series.
Yeah, my buddy Booster was in that. You know Sean Fasano, Booster?
I know who he is. Yeah.
That's one of my good buddies.
So like Brad Geary, my friend, was in there. And, so we had these guys. And so we're in PTR&R and like the weekend before we're getting ready to start, day one, week one, we all go sit down in the old 618 barracks and we watch the Buds Class 234 videos. And this was like the biggest insight that I'd had into what was going to happen at Buds besides being at PTR&R.
Yeah.
And I'm like watching like these series of videos, which if you haven't seen them, Class 234 Discovery Channel series, awesome.
Yeah, but this is like a PG version.
It's like a PG version of what actually happens. And I'm sitting there watching this in the barracks with all these other guys and they're kind of getting pumped. They're like, I'm so ready. And I'm thinking, oh no. I'm like, is this what we're about to go do? And I kind of had like a vague idea, but I'm like, man, I did not prepare myself for other than like running and doing pull-ups and like physically I was ready. Mm-hmm. But mentally, all I knew was I wanted to do this job and I was tough. I wasn't going to quit. Mm-hmm. But like the actual evolutions that we're about to go do, I don't think I knew the way that other people knew. And certainly not the way that this one guy knew because he knew everything that was coming.
Uh-huh.
And, mentally, I think maybe knowing what's coming to that extent maybe psychs you out a little bit. Because you know how much it's going to suck.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, it's like you said with the fighting thing. You can punch yourself in the face as many times as you want to. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the actual fight, you got to stand there and take it.
It's still going to hurt.
It's still going to hurt. Yeah. There's no getting around it.
That's the facts, man. But it is crazy. It teaches you a lot. I always said you got to be just the right amount of toughness and the right amount of dumb. You know what I mean? To make it through Buds. That's what I try to tell people. Like, you got to be dumb enough not to quit. Because you probably should quit, but you know what I mean? But you're just tough enough to make it.
If you try to make sense of it, there's no making sense of it. It sucks. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Like you should quit. There's no human reason why, it's like, it's like when Jordan Peterson was interviewing Sean Ryan and he's talking about like, why'd you go become a SEAL? That's insane. It's insane to go become a SEAL and go through all these things. It's idiotic.
Yeah. And you have to kind of get off a little bit on when somebody's trying to force you to do something that you're not going to do, like the instructors are trying to get in, they're trying to fuck with you mentally
100%.
To make you quit. And so they're trying to find out what deep inside of you they can figure out and pull at that string that's going to make you break. Yep. And so you got to have a little bit of a shit-eating grin side of you that's like, there ain't nothing you can fucking do to make me quit.
Yeah.
You know, and once you figure that out, like you can call me ugly, you can call me slow, you can call me fat. I don't give a shit. You could call me the worst fucking Navy SEAL on earth or whatever candidate.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like once you break through that mental barrier, you just laugh at everything.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it's like, all right, just stay healthy.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a kid who's getting ready to go to Buds, and he was asking me about it, and I said, you know, when I was going through Bud, like I was a good swimmer, I was a good runner, but I was not good at the O course. Mm-hmm. The O course was sort of my kryptonite. And so when we got into Hell Week, the instructors knew that I wasn't good at the O course. And so as we're going through these difficult nights and they're surf torturing you, the instructors would come around and they'd find you. Mm-hmm. And they'd say, hey, Gustavson, we know you suck at the O course. Mm-hmm. So you can make it through Hell Week, but we're just going to drop you for the O course. Your times aren't good enough. You're never going to make it. You know, you can make it through all of this stuff, and we're going to drop you.
So you might as well just quit now.
So
Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Grizzly Coolers, the only cooler I trust when I'm out there. Roto-molded, bear-proof, and holds ice for 10 days straight. And unlike the overseas knockoffs, every Grizzly is proudly made in America with American steel and American grit. Hit grizzlycoolers.com and use my code Shawn, that's SHAWN, for 15% off. Grizzly Coolers, built here, built tough. I will put a link to the website in the description of this podcast.
We'll just quit. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, they're going to drop me anyway. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to make you do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to make you pull me into that performance review board, and I'm going to make you drop me. I'm going to make you, like, we're going to go through all this stuff, and I'm going to make you prove to me that you're still going to drop me. Because until that moment, until you pull me into that board and actually drop me for my performance, I'm going to be here. Mm-hmm. And it's like you said, it's like you make it you against them. And that mind game of like, I'm never quit.
Yeah.
You're going to have to like drag me off of this beach kicking and screaming.
Yeah. And nothing you do is ever going to be right. And you have to learn to accept that if you're going to be going through this kind of training.
Yep.
Even if you're perfect, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Like we had, you would have your uniform inspections Monday morning, I think it was.
Yeah.
Right. At the, after the weekend. And there was this one guy, he would polish his boots like perfect. I mean, they were perfect. He didn't cheat. He didn't take him to that place or whatever it was. They do it for you. He fucking did them perfect, and his uniform was perfect. No Irish pennants anywhere. His hat was just, I mean, perfect, crisp. Everything was starched, immaculate. And he was standing in front of us when we were going through our uniform check one time. And me and my buddy, we were drinking all weekend, and we fucking didn't get to do any of that shit. And we're sitting there like fucking red eyes, hungover, and he's right in front of us. And I'm just like, this fucking guy, they're gonna look at him, and
he's gonna show us up.
Yeah, they're just gonna. And the instructor comes up to him, and he's looking him over, and he takes his hat off, and he's looking at his hat, throws it. He's looking at his uniform, his boots, everything. He's like, don't you got anything better to do with your fucking weekend? Mm-hmm. Fail! And fucking like kicks him out of the fucking. I was just like, and then he comes and passes me and my buddy. We look like dog shit.
Yeah, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
or the guys who would like, and most of us did. You'd like strip and wax your floor on the weekend. You'd take a stripper, you'd get it out, you'd strip all the old wax off. You'd go get the Zepp Stage 3 wax, and you'd just spit shine your floor.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't do that.
Instructors, there wasn't even like a grain of sand. I mean, you could see your reflection on our floor. And the instructors would come in, they had sand on their boots, and they'd knock the sand off their boots, and they'd be like, sand on your floor, hit the surf, and you're just like, there's nothing you could do. But it was like, that's the game. Is like, they want to see you show up, and even though you're probably going to fail.
Yeah.
They want to see you show up with a crisp uniform, a freshly painted helmet, a nice polished floor, and you play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
had, so when we were doing our room inspections, I guess this would be, what phase is that? Second phase, I think, when they move you from the 618 barracks over. So we're going through second phase, and we're doing all that. And that's when you start getting room inspections. Or no, you did them at 618 too. But so we're getting room inspection at the next one. And he comes in, and we didn't really have time. I was with this French guy that was classed up with us, and we call him Frenchie, of course, and he was just funny motherfucker. So we would always party on the weekends, and they're going through, and all of a sudden, because you have to have your phones and everything locked up in your lockers.
Yeah.
His phone started going off, and then my phone started going off, and then our other roommate's phone started going off. And then we're like, fuck, we're like, because you're standing at attention by the door and shit, and all you hear is ring, 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 and like all the phones started going off at the same time. And we're like, fuck, we're going to be in so much shit for this. And the instructor goes, y'all some popular motherfuckers, pass. And then so like after that, starting the next week, you would hear everybody's fucking phones from all the other rooms going off, trying to be like, we're cool too, pass us.
So funny. Yeah, we had the same thing. So it was like people would leave out like donuts and porn.
Oh yeah.
And so the instructors come in and they, you know, like one week they'd be like, oh, Copenhagen's and donuts, this room passes. And the next week people leave out Copenhagen and donuts, and the instructors would go in and be like, you trying to bribe me? Fail.
But I will take this.
Oh, yeah, I will take these anyway, but hit the serve.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so SDV, then you screen for dam neck.
Yep.
All right, and then take it from there.
So yes, screen in 2009. I had done 2 augments with Gold Squadron prior to that, which was awesome. Awesome experience. Changed my whole perspective on what I want to do with my career.
First off, can you explain the different colors for the viewers? Because most people don't have any idea what silver, gold, any of this.
Yeah. So at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, there are 4 squadrons, and they're assigned. Each of them is assigned a color, and they're on a deployment rotation. Is essentially how it works. So people, you'll hear the parlance around Virginia Beach is people like, oh, are you a color team or a number team? That's kind of like the question. Are you a white side guy or are you a DEVGRU guy? So I had done 2 augments, changed my whole perspective. And the whole thing was, you know, coming into the SEAL teams, and I loved being in the SEAL teams. I loved being surrounded by those guys. But working with the DEVGRU guys was what I imagined being a SEAL was going to be like before I came into the SEAL teams. So, you know, you make it through BUDS, you go through all this really hard training, you get to your first team, you know, for me, it was SDV Team Two. And I was like, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's not as high speed. We're doing a ton of diving, specifically at SDVs. We're kind of like, we don't have all the greatest gear. We don't, you know, we're using kind of secondhand equipment that we got from the guys who came through there before us. And I just wasn't like super high on it, you know. So towards the end of my time at SDVs, I was thinking, you know, maybe this isn't for me. I've done my time. Maybe I'll get out, and then I get to do these 2. I end up doing these 2 back-to-back in 07 and 08, these 2 deployments with one of the DEVGRU squadrons. Totally changed. Like the leadership was what I wanted it to be. The gear was what I thought it was going to be. The deployments were what I thought they were going to be. It was like the first like real heavy combat that I had been in. And I was like, oh, this is what I was looking for.
What year was it by the time you made it there?
So I went through Green Team in 2009.
Okay, so right when I was getting into the Navy.
Yeah. Okay. So right when you were getting in. And I had just come off an injury. I got injured on my 2008 deployment, so I did a year of rehab, and I was coming off an injury, screened and went through Green Team, and they had just stood up the 4th Squadron, which was Silver Squadron, and so I got pulled into Silver Squadron. And then ended up doing 12 years there at that squadron, and then did 4 years at another squadron at Dev Group, and then it was kind of, you know, it kind of like dovetailed my career because everything that I had wanted to do when I came in post 9/11, everything that I wanted to see accomplished, all the strategic goals, all the big, like high value targets, all the individuals we were looking at, you know, Saddam had been taken out. 2011, we take out bin Laden, you know, al-Zarqawi, all these different guys that you had kind of like looked at, the deck of 52, right? The 52 most important guys that we wanted off the battlefield had been taken off the battlefield. And so at that point, it's kind of like, I've accomplished the leadership goals that I wanted to do. I made it to, you know, the tier 1 of the SEAL teams. I got to do, 12 years at one squadron, 4 years in another. I'm like, is there anything left like that I feel like I haven't accomplished professionally in this career? And at that point, it really seemed to me like, you know, I'd sort of done everything that I wanted to do. And I kind of got a little bit disillusioned with the whole Navy, military, everything in like post 2020 with all the COVID craziness and with them, you know, almost kicking out 100 SEALs for not taking the COVID vaccine. And I watched all this stuff happen, and I just thought my strategic objectives and sort of what I see myself, the values that I align with, weren't necessarily what I thought was being represented anymore within the greater military structure. And so that just seemed like a good time for me to say, hey, I did everything that I wanted to do. I got to work with some incredible human beings, and I'm ready to call it a career and move on to what's next.
On that subject, so when all of this started coming down, right, there was a lot of inclusivity and diversification of our military, on top of COVID and the mask mandates and getting the vaccine.
Yep.
Right now, fast forward to 2025, we understand exactly how dangerous that vaccine is.
Yep.
Were they requiring you guys to get vaccines?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah, and in fact,
Which vaccine?
So it didn't matter which one. You could do the Pfizer, Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
They kind of gave you the option to choose, but they said everybody has to get this. I was in the Navy long enough to know, like, yeah, you got your pre-deployment vaccines that you have to get, and it was like, and I was never had any objection to getting vaccines. I mean, you go through boot camp and they give you like 12 on your first day in boot camp, right?
Yeah.
And but this was the first time, the COVID vaccine was the first time that I was like, I don't really know about this. It seems like there's a lot of evidence up front that points to this not being as efficient, as effective as everybody's saying. And also there's some data that's saying this could be potentially harmful. And, early in my career, I was diagnosed with a heart condition called a mitral valve prolapse, which just means I have one valve in my heart that like the blood sort of like backwashes over that valve when it pumps a little bit of blood. Not a big deal, never stopped me from doing anything, but now they're talking about this vaccine could potentially exacerbate pre-existing heart conditions or could cause an inflammation of the pericardial sac, pericarditis or myocarditis. And so I went to my medical department. I said, hey, I don't know about this vaccine. It doesn't look like it's stopping COVID. And also there's this potential for it to worsen this heart condition that I have.
Well, and also COVID doesn't look that.
And also COVID doesn't seem that bad, right? I had already had COVID at the time.
Yeah.
And so I went to my medical department and they said, if you don't take the vaccine, if you file for an exemption based on your mitral valve prolapse, and that file for exemption leaves here and goes to BUMED, you'll immediately be put on non-deployable status and you'll have your special pay suspended, which for us is like half your paycheck.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I was like, if it just leaves this medical office and goes to BUMED, they're going to put me on non-deployable status and suspend my special pays just right out of the gate without even looking at it, without even considering the fact that I have a heart condition that could possibly be made worse by this. And they were like, yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, that is
They were strong-arming everybody.
unbelievable. And they strong-armed everybody. And credit to I think it was 100 or 115 guys that kind of held fast and were like, we're not doing this.
Did you guys have any, is there anybody that ever got like blood clots or anything like that?
I'm sure that there were.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody personally, but I think if you just look at the data and statistically, I'm sure that there are people. And I think in the aftermath of that, there was a big push to be like, let's not correlate people that get blood clots or people that get myocarditis with people that took the vaccine. So whereas, when the vaccine was coming out, anywhere you went in the world, people could be like, show me your vaccine card. You got to prove you were vaccinated. I have to see this, right? And then in the aftermath, when people are getting these like incidents, blood clots or myocarditis or whatever, then it became like taboo to ask them, are you vaccinated?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like,
of
oh, you got
course.
myocarditis. Well, I can't ask you if you're vaccinated because then people might correlate that.
Yeah.
And so it was just this like, in my mind, just this insanity. It's like, oh, are we not asking now if people are vaccinated?
Yeah.
And I was like, let's, not an anti-vaxxer by any means. And I don't disbelieve in the medical establishment. All I wanted was some objective data about, is this safe? Does it prevent COVID? Is it safe for our service members? Is this causing potential harm to people that are like young and otherwise healthy? And then in the whole generation of guys in the post-2020 era, guys that are getting ready to go to BUDS, BUDS is extremely hard on your body to the extent that like when we were going through BUDS, and you probably experienced this too, you were prohibited from taking any outside supplements. You couldn't take creatine. You couldn't have protein powder. You certainly couldn't take any like performance enhancing substances or anything like that. Like it was very strictly regimented. And when they did room inspections, they would look like if you had supplements, you couldn't take anything.
Yeah.
You couldn't even take like Advil
Or caffeine.
that didn't come from BUDS Medical.
Exactly.
So I'm like, they are so concerned about your health and fitness and your physical well-being that you can't take any of these substances, which like creatine, caffeine, any of these like NSAIDs and stuff are pretty benign. Certainly wouldn't they look at this medical record and say, here's a kid who had a vaccine that could potentially cause heart damage, and now we're going to put this kid through the most rigorous military training where people have died in the past. And you would think that there would be some consideration for that. Like now we have this whole generation of kids that are potentially a ticking time bomb from a cardiac perspective.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that occurs to me, and I think about it. It's unfortunate for those kids because the kids that were in high school or middle school at the time, they didn't know, right? It's like, and I think a lot of people in the general public just said, well, this is safe. Medical establishment says it's safe. But then, there are people like us, and I think a lot of people in the special warfare community who tend to be, number one, a little bit inquisitive, like, what is this thing that we're doing? And then number two, a little bit incredulous. Like, I'm not just going to hit the I believe button because you tell me this. I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive. I want to figure out, one of the things that I always loved about being in the SEAL teams was that, we have this saying that if you're doing something and the only reason that you're doing it is because that's always the way it's been done, then you need to reevaluate why you're doing it.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Right. The answer can't ever be, we do this because it's always the way that we've done it. And so we're constantly developing new SOPs, new tactics, techniques, and procedures. We're constantly innovating. We're constantly trying to stay at the forefront of creative thinking and, outside the box problem solving. And so it's like you do have this very, I guess, forward thinking community of people who are like, we don't just take do it because you're told as an answer.
So this was passed down from the top, obviously. They said 100% everybody has to get this vaccine, no excuses. But at Naval Special Warfare, was there any pushback from the command on this?
Not at the command level, no.
Nothing, huh?
And I feel like, and this isn't me like pointing the finger at the leadership by any means. I think
facts are facts. You're not pointing the finger at anybody.
My time at DEVGRU was, I feel like, surrounded by some of the best leaders and most capable people that I've ever worked with. But at some point when the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs and the Bureau of Navy BUMED is pushing down this mandate and saying, you guys are all going to do this, the people who are at a single UIC or a single command are sort of powerless to be like, well, we're going to fight this system.
Yeah.
And so it was mostly people falling in line. And I think at those lower levels, you did have people who were kind of like, I'm not 100% sure about this.
Yeah.
But it was like, at that point, essentially what the Navy was telling you was, if you question this, it is at the peril of your own career.
Yeah.
And so you had people who just weren't willing to say, well, I'm going to throw my career on the line. This is the hill that I'm going to die on.
It's your life too.
It's your life.
It's crazy. It's not, oh, you're just going to lose a little bit of pay or, something that you can work through and power through. This is your life you're talking about.
Yep.
And nobody seems to have got it worse. Obviously the elderly and like the obese seem to have got it really bad. But the next one down was really, really healthy athletes that were like really doing a lot in sports, like especially soccer players seem to really get hit hard. You would see videos almost every other week of some soccer player just dropping dead on the pitch or whatever they call it.
And then people just pretended like, oh, this has always happened.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa. Am I living in crazy town here? Like, we haven't always just had teenage and 20-year-old athletes dying on the field.
Yeah. I had a buddy that used to run ultras. He ultras all the time. He was addicted to ultras. He was Goggins before Goggins was Goggins. And he was just like, he would buy like a 5-gallon jug of water and he'd set it down with a note and say, don't drink this or I'll die. And then he would go on a 100-mile run like in Austin and then like,
Crazy.
Loop back, drink some and then keep going. And he just had this thing. He got that vaccine. I think within a month, he started getting blood clots in his leg and the doctor said, you can never run again. If you keep running and this hits your heart, you're done. That's Widowmaker, and he's like, holy fuck. And this is all he ever did was fucking run.
Yeah. So, and there's so many stories like that. And it is really unfortunate that you feel like, one of the crazy things that I remember is, you had all these celebrities going out and they would get the vaccine very publicly. I got the vaccine or whatever. And then they would get COVID right after they got the vaccine. And they're like, oh, thank God I got the vaccine because this could have been worse. And you're like, hold on. You got the thing that's supposed to prevent you from getting this. How could this be any worse? Like, this gave you the thing. And I just remember thinking, this is a whole bunch of craziness. But at the time, also feeling like we are now in an era where the strategic objectives, like mission objectives overseas, have been accomplished to an extent that our focal point is vaccines.
Yeah.
And feeling like at that point, the leadership's values, the leadership at the top, like Secretary Austin and those people, their values didn't align with mine anymore. And if so many of the strategic objectives have been accomplished, that all we're talking about now is diversity, equity, inclusion, and vaccine mandates, it's time for me to check out. And that was really I think 2020, 2021 was really the decision point where I was like, no malice, no bitterness. I had an amazing career. I love the guys I worked with. I love the places I got to work. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But just feeling like, at a certain point, you reach that time when you're like, it's a good time for me to move on. There's a whole lot of other things that I see on the horizon that are potentially good opportunities for me to be taking part in that I haven't been doing because I've been part of this very secretive national mission unit. And now I want to go do some other stuff.
Yeah. And did you, you said you have a kid. How old is your kid again?
24.
24. And so you did have a kid almost all throughout your entire career there.
Yep.
And then married too, I guess, assume you guys were married?
Divorced.
Yep. Okay. But everybody lived down there?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, you gave up a lot of time with your family, man.
Yep.
Like what kept you motivated going through? Because like I said, I got out after 8. I looked at my 8-year mark as the biggest crossroad in my career, because if I would have re-signed for another 4, that would have pushed me to 12, and I felt like I'd be stuck till 20.
Yep.
I felt like I wouldn't let myself retire at 12 with only 8 more years.
Yeah, 12 years is kind of that critical window where you're like, it's shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
Right? Pardon the crude expression. But if you do 12, you're past 10, you're more than halfway to 20, you have a full retirement at 20.
Yeah.
And so, I was always perplexed by the guys that did like 16 or 17 and then we're like, I'm done. You're
Yeah,
like,
how does that even
hold on, you're done?
Yeah.
But like that critical window of like 12 is that point where you can still kind of be like, I don't want to do another 8 years. But by the time I did, my third re-enlistment, I was at 14 years or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to do the other 6. And at that point, really, I was still enjoying my career. The time when I had been at SDV for like 6 years, around 2008, and I got injured on a deployment. I actually got shot in Iraq.
Yeah, you got a Purple Heart up
Yeah,
there,
the Purple
right?
Heart, yep. And
You want to tell that story real quick?
Meet the Stopbox Pro. Fast, one-handed access thanks to a patented 5-finger lock. No fiddling, no waiting. Built in the USA from tough, impact-resistant polymer, it's light enough to carry and TSA compliant for travel. No batteries, no electronics to fail, just simple, reliable mechanics you can trust. The Stopbox Pro. Secure, ready, and practical. Buy one, get one free during our Black Friday sale. New limited edition designs and a free gift available while supplies last.
so we were, just the wave tops of the story. We were on an operation in Iraq. I was an augment to DEVGRU at the time. And we had conducted this mission. We conducted a call out. A few people came out of the house, and then we did helicopter gun runs on the house. Helicopters flew over, rockets and miniguns, and then basically a small group of us, 4 or 5 guys, we went back down just to basically confirm that everybody in the house had been taken care of, and we were going to go in and do like a sensitive site exploitation. So we go down. I positioned myself in a security spot in the courtyard, and then there were 2 guys we sent the dog in the house. We had a dog down there. Send the dog in the house. Dog goes in. There's a couple dead bodies in the main area of the house. Dog goes in. There's a lot of smoke. Some parts of the house are on fire, and then there's a couple dead bodies in the main entryway. Dog goes in, hits one of the dead bodies, comes back out. They send the dog again. Dog goes, comes back out. So we're like free and clear, right? A couple of us take security positions in the courtyard, and then 2 guys go to make entry. As soon as they step in the doorway, there's a guy who's recessed 1 room back behind a second doorway to where we couldn't see him, and somehow he had survived the helicopter gun runs. And he had a belt-fed PKM. And so he shoots the 2 guys in the door, a guy named Mike Koch and a guy named Nate Hardy, and they're killed instantly. I hear the gunfire, turn around, start moving towards the door. He lets off another burst of fire, hits me in the leg, hits me in the plate. I realize I can't see him. I'm not really in a position where I can engage him. So pull back, put a tourniquet on my leg. We call some other guys down from a second target building that they were on. They come down. They're able to neutralize the guy in the house and, get us, our 2 KIA off target and myself, and we get medevac to a hospital in Balad. And so that would have been February 4th of 2008. Super Bowl Sunday. In fact, we missed the Patriots-Giants Super Bowl to go out on this target.
Yeah, everybody's getting drunk watching the Super Bowl. You're getting around to the plate and the leg.
Yeah, and so really, but it had kind of been like, if there was a decision point for me in my career, it was probably around that deployment. Like I had thought prior to that deployment, like I might just call it a career. Like I was ready to be done. I didn't want to do more time at SDVs. I really enjoyed my deployments with DEVGRU, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to screen. And I was kind of in that like 8-year window, came in late 2001 and here we are in 2008. And I'm at that like 7-8 year mark. After that, as I'm sitting in the hospital in Iraq and then later a hospital in Germany, and I'm thinking about my career and I'm like, this can't be the way that my career ends. This can't be the note, like this can't be the last chapter in my career as a SEAL. So I got my ass shot off on target and then I hung it up because I was injured. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, whatever else happens, I at least have to do one more deployment. I have to write the ending to my story that I want. And so the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, you know what, I'm not just going to come back and be a team guy and do one more deployment. Like I'm going to come back and I'm going to screen. I'm going to get selected. I'm going to try to go over to DEVGRU and I'm going to try and do at least a deployment or 2 or 3. So that's what I did. I did a year of rehab. I had to have a tendon surgery on my foot because I had some nerve damage that was causing my foot to do some weird things. And then ended up doing about 9 months of rehab. And at the end of that 9 months, I screened for, outside of BUDS, the hardest thing in the SEAL teams is going through selection for SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
And so I screened and went through that selection after this injury. And to kind of like, just like we talked about in BUDS, a lot of that is just proving to yourself, like, I'm going to make it through this. Like, I'm going to do this. And the end of my story didn't end on that battlefield in Balad, Iraq in 2008. I got to go do this other thing. And, and having the memory of the 2 guys that we lost who were amazing dudes who even though I was an augment, I wasn't really part of the team. They took me under their wing. They were always teaching me things and showing me things. And I was like, these are the kind of guys that I really want to work with. And then was able to, fortunately make it through and get over there. And then once I got to DEVGRU, I was like, yeah, this is it. Like, this is the job I wanted to do when I came into the teams. And so then I was very fortunate to get to do the next 15 years at the command.
You got any good, sexy stories that are unclassified you can tell us about?
None that are unclassified, unfortunately. I'll tell you, like I said, it was the place that, like, when you watch the movies and when you think about what it's probably like to be a SEAL, like being at the command.
Just pretend there's a younger version of you that's going to be listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, I tell him, there's a sign that hangs outside of the back of the command. There's like 2 doors that lead into the locker room at the command that go into all the lockers where all the guy's kit is and where all the big missions, all the big operations, all the big deployments, they start in that locker room, right? Where everybody's stuff is. And over that door out back, it says the deed is all, not the glory.
The deed is all.
The deed is all, not the glory. And so it's like that sort of call to be a humble warrior, that call to be like a quiet professional, and to know that you walk into that locker room and there's guys that I worked with who were Navy Cross winners, 2 guys who were Medal of Honor winners, guys that I knew who had made impossible missions seem commonplace, guys that are out there doing this job day in and day out, never wanting the recognition, never wanting the fame. And you walk down these rows of lockers in between all of the squadrons and you look at the name tags that are on all the lockers. And it's these guys who are just like the most incredible, most accomplished of our nation's warriors of the last, 20 or 30 years, or certainly probably since, Vietnam or even World War II. And just the legacy and the fact that you get to be a part of that organization. And it's like they say, if you work a job you love, or if you have a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And so showing up there day in and day out, and the facilities that we got, and the chow hall that we had, and the guys that you get to work with, and the leadership that you get to work under, and the camaraderie, and then the mission sets and the deployments, it really made coming to work for 15 years fun.
Yeah.
Like the place that you wanted to be,
Yeah.
And, I imagine if I was a more athletic person, it would have been like being a professional athlete or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, but team guys, we're just a bunch of like mid-level athletes with just really hard heads, just too dumb to quit,
100%.
And so it was just a phenomenal place to work. And it's like, now I look back and I say, yeah, there were times when there were disappointed deployments or times when you went through injury or hardship, or, I got divorced the same year that I got shot.
Man, that was a rough year.
It was right, dude. It was a rough year. I'm telling you, it was a rough year. I got divorced. I got injured, got divorced, was in a rollover accident when I was home with some friends, like doing my recoup and recovery on like this little, I couldn't ski, but we went up to the mountain and I just wanted to hang out with people, kind of get it off my mind. And as we're coming back down from the mountain, we get in this rollover accident. It was a crazy year. And there were times during that year when I just thought to myself, I was like, God, if this is it, just call it. Yeah. Right. Quit teasing me with this. Like, quit messing with me. And like, if you're done with me, like, just call me home. But it was one of those years where I was like, man, if I make it through this, I was like, nothing can stop me.
Yeah. I was just looking at this box that threw me off. So I just picked up a new sponsor. This company's called Stopbox. You ever heard of this company?
Yeah.
It's pretty dope, man. Apparently you can drive over this thing.
Should we take these mics out to the parking lot and see if we can actually drive over it?
Tempt me with a good time. But check this thing out. You can,
what do you got?
You can create your own custom
like
lock, and there's like different things. So basically, it's supposed to. You can keep your stuff close to you without like. That's locked and loaded, by the way. But oh yeah, Alex Jones gave me that. I train Alex Jones on every morning. We're both in town.
Oh no,
in the gym, yeah. And so he gives me all sorts of like trinkets, the stuff that he sells on his site. He's like, "You want this? This is worth a lot of money, brother." Like
in his Alex Jones voice.
Yeah, that's that 365.
Yeah, this is a shout out to Sig. 365 XL is my everyday carry too.
Yeah.
That's nice.
What did they at DEVGRU? What did they have you guys on, or what did they issue, or was it just whatever you want?
So we had most of my career when you started out, and this is like a legacy deal. We had the SIG P226, right? So most of the rounds I ever shot of 9mm, I shot out of a SIG P226. It's when we shot going through buds. It's when we do our pistol qual up at Camp Pendleton.
226. And
so for a long time, I just loved the P226. It's not the best pistol in the world, but there's nothing you can do to that thing that's going to make it not shoot. It's an awesome gun that way, super durable. And it was kind of a legacy thing from all the way back to, in fact, I have a SIG P226 that's a 50th anniversary of the SEAL teams from 1962 to 2012.
Oh, nice.
SIG did a run of like specially engraved where it says, the only easy day was yesterday and has all the stuff on it. Very cool. So I carried that for a long time. That was my service pistol. And then we switched in, I would say probably early in my years at DEVGRU, we switched to like Glock 19s. And so I started carrying a Glock, and Glock is cheaper. Glock is super durable. There's and it's a single action, so it's a lot easier trigger. And once you get used to the different dynamic between shooting a Glock and shooting a SIG, which is the cant of your wrist when you hold the gun is a little slightly different. And this is in the days before red dot sights were very mainstream. So it was all iron sights. Shout out to all the iron sight shooters.
Are you strictly iron sight too? Yeah.
So I carried the Glock for a long time. Love the Glock 19, great gun. And then when SIG came out with the 365 series, I went and picked one up because I was like, I don't know. I don't really love, I didn't like the Glock 43 because it was too small. I don't really love small guns. They're a little bit small for my hands. But SIG came out with the 365, which is a small gun, but they came out with the XL version. So it's a little longer pistol grip and then some of the extended magazines. And I just loved it. It's a great everyday carry gun. I put the Romeo red dot sight on it. I shoot that thing all the time. Love it. It's a great gun. And then I ended up putting a red dot on my Glock 19 too.
Magazines, double stack.
The whole thing. Yeah. Just a great gun. It hit all of it's like they took all the operators and got like end user feedback.
They finally listened to it.
Yeah, they finally listened. Yeah, they're like, okay, double stack magazines, extended magazines, small gun, but with long enough pistol grip to hold on to and stuff. Super easy concealed carry. Like even if you're, one of these guys that wears like tight t-shirts and stuff, it doesn't imprint that much. So it's just a great gun. And I really like shooting it. And then, Glock too. I mean, Glock's an easy gun, but if I had to take my pick of the guns, if I had to give away all the rest of my pistols, I'd probably keep my 365 XL.
100%.
Yeah.
So back to where we were. So you get out 2024.
Yep.
Which is not that like a year and a half ago.
Right?
Yeah. Did you, because like stepping out into the public light and putting your name out there attached with the SEAL credentials, a lot of people obviously is frowned upon in the community on a number of levels. So it is making a commitment because once you cross over that line, there's no coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I struggled with it for a long time. I think I struggled with it for I don't know, 6, 7 years. It's about 6 years when I got out, and I'm like, there's so much more opportunity once you cross over.
Yeah.
But once you do, you risk, alienating yourself from your own community, and So how was that for you making the decision? Quickly. I mean, obviously you're in for a longer.
Yeah.
career.
So I'll say it wasn't a decision it wasn't like a, do I want to be famous? Because I never did. And I still really don't. It was a decision of expediency. When I got out, a buddy of mine who had preceded me in retirement had started a nonprofit that took retired SEALs to train law enforcement. So the whole mission of the nonprofit was to take SEALs, because we train a certain tactic, and we can teach law enforcement to effectively and safely respond to active shooter situations,
And
of which there are far too many.
And was this based off of what happened to Uvalde?
Part of it was based off, and not just Uvalde, there were a number of incidents, but we trained years and years ago. My squadron did a training down in Fort Lauderdale. The local law enforcement helped us out with the training. And as a give back to law enforcement, when we were down there, we went and trained at a couple of different areas, a couple of buildings within their local area. And one of those was Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. So we took the SWAT team for Broward County and the SWAT team for Miami-Dade, and we went and trained at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, which is where the Parkland shooting happened.
Okay.
The Parkland shooting was a tragic incident where a bunch of people were outside who should have gone in, should have had the appropriate training and equipment to go in to respond to the active shooter, and didn't go in.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the SWAT teams that didn't go in, because the SWAT teams weren't there. It was the first responders. It was some of the sheriffs. It was some of the other, and there were a bunch of people that took a lot of heat for that in the aftermath. But when you look at those situations and you look at the guys who were the first on scene and the people that we had trained, which were the full-time SWAT team guys, and we're saying, okay, where's the disconnect here? The full-time SWAT team guys were not the first guys on scene and weren't there until 20 or 30 minutes after the shooting was already happening. So the first people there didn't have the training or didn't have the know-how or weren't willing to go in because they maybe didn't feel like they could be successful.
Yeah.
And so, that was sort of the genesis, is like that and Uvalde and a number of other incidents of us saying him saying, Andrew Sullivan, our founder, saying, there has to be a mechanism that we can train these patrol level officers to have at least some of the tactics to make them successful in these active shooter situations. Mm-hmm. And since there isn't a lot of funding and there's not really a mechanism to get that training to them for free, we're like, well, and like I said about SEALs being outside the box, innovative thinkers, the idea is let's start a nonprofit where we fundraise and then take that funding and take SEALs to go train these guys at no cost to the department.
What's the name of that nonprofit?
It's called Community First Project.
Community First.
And if you want to look it up online, it's c1p.org. And please go on, check out the website, make a donation. We're all donation funded. And so the mission set for us is being able to fundraise enough. It costs about $25,000 for us to go train a department for 40 hours, to do a 40-hour week with the department. Currently, we're here in Round Rock. We're doing a training here this week with the Round Rock and Austin PD. So it's a great mission. But going back to the original question, without seeking fortune and fame, the way to get the message out about who we are and what we're doing is going on podcasts, is seeking a little bit of publicity, is networking, is getting your name out there and saying, this is who I am. Let me tell you my story in the vein of me wanting to fundraise and build groundswell around this idea that military and veterans, specifically special operations folks, we love our local law enforcement. We love the PD here at home. One of the other unfortunate things that happened in 2020 was that a lot of the defund the police movement happened, the George Floyd thing. And so it's at a time when our law enforcement needs more support than ever, they're getting less support and less funding than ever. Mm-hmm. And so, we have this mission set. And the great thing for us as veterans is that it really takes a mission of, what I thought about for years and years as our domestic security, which as the military, we go overseas and defend our domestic security by taking the fight to our nation's enemies. But at the same time, that domestic security is getting eroded here at home by defund the police movements, by this whole idea that cops are bad, that they're on the other team, or just not giving them the proper training and then setting them up for failure. And then when they fail, prosecuting them or throwing them in jail or, doing any of these other things. And, another good friend of mine, a guy named Mitch Aguiar. I don't know if you know Mitch.
I don't think so.
He started a brand of his called Massive Supplements, but he also started a nonprofit called Adopt a Cop BJJ, which is, he's a black belt jiu-jitsu. And so he started this nonprofit that takes, and he partnered with like 1,100 Brazilian jiu-jitsu academies nationwide that they will train any cop up to a blue belt level for free.
That's cool.
And that was in the wake of like the Michael Floyd thing and the, whatever, I can't breathe, that whole deal. And just saying like, let's give our cops, instead of complaining that our cops are undertrained or that they are mishandling these situations, let's give them the tools to be successful. Let's give them the training. Let's give them free Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Let's give them the ability to handle these situations appropriately, to not over-escalate, to manage those with, I mean, you're a jiu-jitsu guy, right?
Yeah. Well, when I'm not hurt.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm still recovering from a shoulder injury, and I had one of my ribs that popped out, the intercostal, whatever.
Yeah.
Popped out when I was training with my instructor. And so I'm like, I'm going to take some time off here.
It's a constant battle.
I got in too late. I'm too old.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about jiu-jitsu is on a long enough timeline. It's
Yeah.
injury after injury. But so we started this nonprofit. I can't even tell you how many thousands of cops have been trained, but it's this whole idea that like, one of the things I love about the SEAL teams is like you identify a problem and then you say, how can we fix this? Instead of just saying, hey, there's a problem, let me gripe about it. And we do love to complain. But once we're done complaining, we say, how can I fix this? Yeah, we throw rocks. Exactly. Is there something I can do to make a difference here? And so with Community First Projects, that's what we did. And sort of, I would call it a necessary evil of that is being like, yeah, I'm going to come out and have to expose this public persona of this is who I am, this is my career, and these are the units I worked at. And it hasn't been without pushback.
Yeah, from the community?
From the community. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there's definitely elements of the community that are like, hey, this guy's on podcasts, F him.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, it is that balance of like, as much as that's disagreeable to me, it's like the mission that we're doing and the idea of getting this message out and exposing a little bit of publicity.
It's going to save lives.
It's going to save lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that's the bigger mission.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. And I understand it from the other side too. For sure. It's so easy to just fall in line with people that, oh, this guy's writing a book. But what they seem to forget, or maybe they never knew, but somebody has to inspire the next generation of Navy SEALs. Yeah. Okay. They don't just appear out of thin air and say, I'm going to become a Navy SEAL. How did they find out what a Navy SEAL was? They read a book or they watched a movie. Yep. Okay. Somebody has to do that. And I know, a lot of people chirp on David Goggins, you know what I mean? A lot of people. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I get it. But if you listen to his books and you listen to him speaking to these people, I get fucking motivated by what that guy's saying. Yeah, I don't care what he did in the past. I don't know. I didn't work with him. I can't judge him based off of that. If you wanted to say that, okay, sure. But I never experienced that. I don't know. All I know is that he's inspiring people to get off their ass and fucking get in shape and get better. And, how many people join the Navy with the intention to become a Navy SEAL because they're a fan of David Goggins? Yeah. So... you want to talk about giving back to the community. You give back to the community by inspiring the next generation of frogmen, in whatever facet that may come. And if you make a little money in the process, good on you, but also give some of that back to the community too. I think it's fine. And honestly, I've never received any negative blowback. I've had a few frogmen that I didn't even know that reached out to me just to say that they're proud of me and keep doing what I'm doing and you're doing good work. Knock on wood. Yeah. I haven't received much hate yet. It's good. But, I feel for you. And, being on this side of it, you talk about crossing over a line you can't come back from. Once you're over here, we're the teams are small. This is even smaller now. And you have an obligation and a lot of pressure to speak, educated on topics and not back yourself into a corner that you can't get out of now.
Yeah, right, for sure. And there's definitely a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned Dave Goggins, and one of the things I love about him is he's not out there telling people he was the best SEAL or that he won all these accolades or that he deployed 1,000 times or anything like that. What he's out there telling people is like, you can be tougher than you think you are, and you should go out and do hard shit. Yeah. Challenge yourself, push yourself. And like you said, motivating the next generation of SEALs, but also motivating just people, just your average everyday person to get off their ass and go do something. And his message resonates with who he is as a person. I think, realistically, who he was as a team guy, but also who he is as a person. And I think if you stay true to that messaging and like not try to be something that you weren't, and which is why like, I'll talk about my career, but a lot of what I want to talk about is like, let's talk about what I'm doing now with in the nonprofit space and training law enforcement, because I'm super passionate about that. And I'm incredibly grateful for the career that I had. But also what I'm grateful for now is the fact that that career was a segue to me being able to do something else. And you take, the U.S. taxpayers invested millions of dollars in training us to do the things that we did. And now I take that 22 years of training and I'm like, should I just sit on my hands or what can I do with this?
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be people who have negative things to say, or people who, oh, you went on a podcast and you said this, or you told people you were at DEVGRU and whatever. And I'm like, yep. I did.
Yeah.
I know.
So what?
What?
There's no other career where it's hard and, it's such an amazing thing that you did to where you get out and they're like, don't ever fucking talk about that.
Don't ever talk about this.
And go fuck yourself if you do.
You played 20 years in the NFL? That's great. Don't ever mention it to anybody else and anything else you do.
It's like, well, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, I get it. You were talking about the poker deck or whatever.
Yeah,
for like,
the deck 52, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize there was a 52 card deck for some of our soldiers that were on our side too, like that the Taliban had, and they would pass these around, and there was different varying degrees. So I can understand from that aspect. Like what you're doing is going to put people's lives at risk. Like we're not going to talk tactics on this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about how we stack and what order we're going in and what this and that. And I don't plan on doing that. I don't share locations or anything like that. But there's nothing wrong with sharing some stories that aren't going to hurt anybody. Yeah. And like I said, I form every podcast with the intention that there is a large group of young versions of me and you out there, and they can't wait till they're old enough and they can go and do this stuff. And so I want them to see like, this is how it's done. If you're going to try this kind of mentality you need to have, and be you and just be respectful to the community. But the community doesn't necessarily know everything.
Yeah. And there's always going to be people who have strong opinions about what you're doing or what you're saying. And like you said, I'm not divulging tactics. I'm not talking about a specific place that we were or where we were deployed. I'm not naming names of other people that were out there, but the principles that make us successful and the principles that make a great organization. Those things are important. It's important to know for the next generation of frogmen specifically. If you're coming up and you plan on being a successful member of this organization, this community of SEALs, here's some things that it's good to know. Yeah. Here's the way we carry ourselves. Here's the way we do business. Here's the mindset that we embrace.
Right. And this carries over into the civilian world. There's a lot of really good people out there that will never serve in the military, but they're leading huge corporations or organizations or whatever it is. And a lot of this stuff they struggle with like leadership and like, how do I deal with all these different personalities? In the military, we're kind of lucky, especially in the teams, because it's just all guys. But in other ones, they have women and guys, and they have to, you're tiptoeing through a landmine sometimes, depending on what people are underneath you and what they got going on in their lives. So there's a lot that you can carry over, and I'm sure you've probably been sought out by a lot of people to have you done any motivational speaking for businesses?
Yeah, for sure. Some corporate speaking, and again, talking about principles, talking about leadership, talking about building high performing teams, talking about selecting talent, talking about how to have hard conversations, and those kind of things are those are things that I think they transcend that military corporate barrier, right? The things that are apply to us, and not just military and corporate, but also like sports. If you look at the things that make professional athletic organizations successful, they're the same principles that make military organizations successful. And those are the same principles that carry over into the corporate world, or even into, I would say, like family life, organizations, friend groups that you work with and stuff like that. And I think, even you and me, we got connected by a mutual acquaintance, a mutual friend that we know who is a team guy who's out doing great things in his own life.
Shout out to Dave.
Shout out to Dave Meadows.
He'll be on here soon.
And it's just that great organization, that great network of having people around you who have similar values, who are like-minded, who are people that you trust. And we know, without you and me going through buds together, we trust each other because we went through the same crucible to arrive at the professional destination that we were looking for.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I can respect you without even knowing you. Before you even walked in the door, as soon as you got out of the car, I was like, yep,
Yep,
I like
that's
them.
it.
Let's go.
That's it. We're going to have a great conversation. I know it because I know we have shared values and shared funny stories.
100%. And we got Dave
About
Meadows.
how dumb we are. Yeah.
Dave Meadows is wild. He's out there acting
wild.
now.
He's wild.
He bought into Bitcoin. Like, I don't want to share this financial stuff, but he bought into Bitcoin pretty early.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did
Good
he ever
for
tell you
him.
this stuff?
No.
Yeah, dude. You know how we get those huge re-signing bonuses?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he dumped like a majority of that back when this shit was like really
Dude.
cheap. No, he's doing really good.
Props to anybody who got in, who was an early adopter on Bitcoin, because I'm going to tell you, I was a staunch like non-believer. I was like, what? It's what now? It's ones and zeros that are going to make money?
When I was in, it was at like, it had just crossed over from like the 2000s to $3,000 a coin.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I didn't have any money at the time,
Yeah.
or else I would have bought some.
And I know here I was sitting, I was like, people are paying $3,000 for something that doesn't even really exist.
Exactly.
And now it's like $110,000. I'm like, I'm an idiot. I should have bought it.
So I wanted to ask you, I was watching one of your former podcasts,
Yeah.
and you were talking about how basically you believe like the hand of God inspired the founding fathers
Yeah.
to write the Constitution.
Yep.
And I thought the way you spoke about that was so like eloquent. Can you speak on that again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and here's the thing, and this goes back to the days when I was a missionary and I went down to Brazil, and went to Brazil, lived in Brazil for 2 years, visited some other countries, and then during my time in the teams, and I got to see countries in the Middle East and places in Southeast Asia and some of these different places. And every time I come back to the United States and I think about the integrity of our Constitution and the fact that it's a document that was written almost, we're coming up on 250 years. And that the founding fathers had that insight to write the Constitution the way that they did, to make it flexible and amendable, to make it so that it was applicable 250 years ago, but it remains as applicable today as it ever was. And I think about that, and I can't help but see the hand of divine inspiration in that. I can't help but to think that and you think about all of these other nations that have had constitutions that are written and then they fall away or they're not applicable, and I think if we took the Congress that we have today and all of those people and all the education, everything that goes into it, and you had them try to write a document that would be enduring, that document wouldn't last a decade.
Yeah.
If they could even put one together. I mean, we can't even agree on a continuing resolution for a budget that already exists.
No. True.
So the fact that the founding fathers were able to put that together, and the way that you read it and the language involved and the people, and what they had at stake. And I just can't, when I think about that, I can't help but to think that there was a hand of divine inspiration in that.
Yeah.
And I'm a Christian. I grew up Mormon. I believe in divine inspiration. And I certainly believe that our country, our nation, is the last bastion of, I think, hope. We are, as the Bible puts it, a light on a hill. And I think we are an ensign designed to be set forth, in front of all of the other nations. I think we set the example for how we should be. And I think we're really the most blessed, most privileged, most opportunistic or opportunity available society, not just in the world, but in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And I think if you live in this country and you take part in our constitutional republic that we have, and you fail to recognize just how unique that is, you're really missing an opportunity to see just how historic it is. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of Greek philosophers and Plato and Socrates and the people who pioneered democracy and came up with these ideas that were then filtered down into what a constitutional republic could be. Mm-hmm. And then those documents were written by men who were inspired of God. And I truly believe that.
And how long do you think we keep that, though?
That's a good question. I feel like it's fragile.
I always figured, like, in order to have God's blessing, you have to maintain righteousness.
I think
right?
so, yeah.
In your citizens, the majority of your citizens.
Yep.
And it feels like that's slipping away from our republic.
Yeah.
At an accelerating pace. So, like, at what point do we sit there and go, this is no longer worthy of God's blessings?
And, I think that's
what happens then?
that's a question that is a good question, because there are times, especially in recent history, when I have sat and asked myself that very question. Like, are we still, as a nation, doing the things that are making us deserving of God's blessing?
Yeah.
And I think, when you look at it, and one of the things that I think I take heart in, I don't mean to be this like a downer here. One of the things that I take heart in is it seems like, particularly in this upcoming generation of young men, there has been a resurgency in this foundational belief system and the desire for young men to have families, to adhere to Christian values, to be public servants, to want to join the military or law enforcement, to be good family men, and to sort of like, and I don't know what it is, whether part of it is probably like the whole Turning Point USA movement and some of those other things, but there's been this redirection back towards these traditional Christian values. And I'm even on a text thread with a bunch of friends of mine who were, in professional athletics and some of these other very high performing organizations who are some of them are even very accomplished athletes and team guys and some of these other people. And it's like a Christian devotional that every morning we sort of touch base with each other with these like messages of like Christianity and re-expressing our faith and these kind of things. And it's something that didn't necessarily feel, I think, even necessary maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. But now it's like I draw strength from that every morning, from hearing these messages from these guys who are saying, we're out there and like, hey, be your best self today, be a good representative of Christ today, live these good values, be a good father, be a good husband, be a good citizen. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there is a resurgence in the men and young men of this generation wanting to push and wanting to embrace and embody those values.
Yeah. As a country, though, I mean, this division, obviously on both sides, there's religious people on both sides, and you would hope that they'd be embodying everything that you just described.
Yeah, for sure.
But there is a growing segment of our country that is completely going off the rails.
Yeah.
And in appearance and the way they act and the way they behave online, and now growing increasingly more violent, which you typically didn't see from the left. Me all growing up, I never heard about the left like attacking and doing, killing people, and, you know what I mean, and shooting up schools.
Antifa and riots and people in the street, just,
But yet here we are now.
Yep.
And I haven't heard a solution yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's hard to say because a lot of those things, like you see, always when we were growing up, you had the two sides, but both of them are still essentially compatible with Western values.
Yeah.
The idea on the left and the ideas on the right, although we disagreed about fiscal policy and about certain other things, everything that everybody was talking about was essentially still compatible with these ideas of Western democracy and a constitutional republic and all these other things. And now you feel like a lot of the mainstream ideas, specifically on one side, are incompatible with Western democratic values, are incompatible with the civil liberties that we embrace, incompatible with the Western ideas from all the way from the Greeks, all the way through the establishment of, Western Europe and then into the Americas. Mm. And now you have these ideas that are coming out that are like, there's places in Texas that want to implement Sharia law. And I'm like, Sharia law is incompatible with Western values. It doesn't, those two things do not coexist. Yeah. They cannot coexist. Mm-hmm. And so that's a thing that is, for the first time, you're looking at this idea and you're looking at this sitting members of Congress who are advocating for the downfall of Western democracy. Yeah. And you're like, you are only able to participate in Western democracy because of our values.
Yeah. You're only allowed to say that because of our
You're only allowed to say that because you immigrated here and were embraced by this country and its values. Yeah. And so it is a very, it's sort of cognitive dissonance, right? It's them wanting to entertain these two incompatible ideas at the same time, saying, one and the other. And I think the same thing about democratic socialism as I do about Sharia law. It's incompatible. It doesn't work.
Well, I always wonder, because everybody always refers back to 9/11, and post 9/11, this country was never more united in a cause. And I wonder if that was to happen again today, would that still happen? I don't think it would at this point. I think this is a completely different country.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they blame it on Trump, and it's like, well, I don't think Trump is a bad person. I think he really does believe in the values and the Constitution that this country was founded on, and he's doing his best to bring that back. But I cannot deny the fact that he makes so many people on that side fucking angry.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot deny it. Regardless of how you feel about him, you cannot deny the effect that he's having on that side. Yeah. But I don't know if when he's out of office and say J.D. Vance or whoever replaces, or like, I don't think that's going to go away. This animosity that's started to drive up from the left. Yeah. And you would like to be like, oh, as soon as Trump's gone, things can kind of go back to normal. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. I think there's a level of hate we've never seen before in this country. And I think it's building up, and like the pressure is building up in this country to, hate to say it, but civil war.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know all of the sort of unforeseen, like circumstances that come into play. There's a really interesting book by an author called Nassim Taleb called The Black Swan, where he talks about how, everybody sort of plans, and he talks about it from an economical standpoint, but how we plan for all of the known, variables, right? So when we're looking at things economically, we plan for everything that we know, all of the variables that are in play, and everybody says, based on our economic models, this is what we predict should happen. But then there are black swan events, which are massive, sometimes catastrophic, unforeseen events that you just can't factor. Like, for example, 9/11. 9/11 had huge implications on the financial markets because it took down the World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden there was this trepidation about investing and all these different things. But no economist could have predicted that, right? It just wasn't a thing. It was a black swan event that occurred that nobody could have predicted. So I'd like to think that on an equal and opposite sort of spectrum, there are black swan events that happen for the positive. If you'd asked me in 2020, I'd have been like, yeah, we're on a downward spiral. Things are not going well and things are not looking very good. And then all of a sudden you have, now in the wake of certain things, now you have this resurgence. And I would have said like the establishment of Turning Point USA was sort of a black swan. It was the pendulum swinging the other way. And you had all of a sudden this very like popular campus movement back towards conservative values. And you had this sort of disaffected generation of like young, particularly like white Christian people who were like, hey, I feel like I'm left out of the conversation now. I'm not being included in all of the things. And so them wanting to reestablish their voice and say, hey, these things really matter to us. And so, it's hard for me to be, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but it's hard for me to be predictive about where things go from here because I could see it going in both directions. One, I've seen the negative side of things. And I do think that there's a lot of people who, particularly when sort of like baited by the media to say, this person is a fascist or this person is, whatever, all of the things that they say about Trump. And I think you need to calm down that rhetoric and start saying like, hey, it's possible to have a political disagreement without saying that the whole other side needs to be put in concentration camps. Yeah. It's possible to have a political disagreement. And it's like Biden was in office for 4 years and I ardently disagreed with his policies, but I didn't lose sleep over it at night. Right. I just kind of thought, the things that we're doing right now aren't necessarily compatible with us being successful as a nation. And I think the other side sort of needs to recognize, hey, just because I disagree with Trump, there's still good things that are going on. He has brokered peace between nations that have been at war for years and years and years. But somehow even in the Israel-Gaza peace agreements, they're still like, well, yeah, he brokered peace, but it's still bad because it's Trump, or whatever.
Exactly. Speaking of Israel, like I'm noticing now, so there's been this huge division between the left and right, and now the right seems to be splitting down the middle between pro-Palestine, pro-Israel.
Which is super weird. And
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this now. And like, what is that? What kind of, ongoing effect is that going to have? And you can see it plain as day in like the influencer sphere. Yeah. Right. It's getting pretty nasty, bro.
It's super bizarre because, it's like, and this is one of the things that I would have said maybe another black swan event in the trajectory of our country is the advent of social media. Now you have this platform where all of a sudden people have access to all of these different opinions, and you have that driven by an algorithm that specifically targets certain messaging towards certain people. So to where everybody now begins to live in this echo chamber of this thing, I like these videos, therefore I see more of those videos, therefore I think more of this is happening. And I think it's good. We're from a generation that's old enough to say, hey, I can step back and remember when I didn't get to hear everybody's voice about every topic and I kind of had a very fair and balanced opinion of the things that were going on in the world. And I think it's good just to be able to objectively stand back and be like, all of these people don't know all of the things about everything. And maybe this algorithm isn't leading me to the best possible reasonable conclusions. So let's try and be a little bit balanced in the way that I think about things. And I also think the other thing is like, it's good to seek out, even if you disagree with it, what is the other side saying? Right? Rather than just saying, well, the other side is wrong about everything, no matter what. So I'm not even going to listen to them. Let's at least entertain their argument. Let me hear what they have to say. One of the things I like about Charlie Kirk before his unfortunate demise was he's one of these people who is like willing to debate anybody. And I think we need more of that idea of like, let's go sit down and like you and me have a constructive debate about what you think and I think. I don't want to shout you down. I want to tell you my ideas and let me hear your ideas and let's come to sort of a reasonable conclusion. And I think that idea of let's have constructive public debate about things is, because it really is like once the conversation stops, the violent rhetoric starts.
Yeah. I always felt that what he was doing was great, but the way they were doing it was wrong. It was stoking a little bit of chaos and anger from the other side. Like what you're doing is great. You're sitting down, but the way they were videoing it and editing it and putting it out to the world came across as very arrogant, right? Like, we're just smarter than all you fucking idiots. Like, one after another. Send another one in. You're dumb. You're dumb. You're dumb. I school you. I school you. Yeah. And it's like, I know what he's trying to do. He's like the negotiator, right? Yeah. But if they could have done that a little bit better, instead of having the popcorn fucking gallery in the background going, oh, like that's like a school fight. You hear that shit, and then sure, it's gonna get a lot of like views and clicks, but is that really the setting that we're trying to show the world that, hey, we can sit down and have a serious conversation? Yeah. Like honestly, this type of setting right here, where there's nobody to go ooh and ah and whatever, but we can have somebody from the left and somebody from the right, and we can sit here and talk through different issues. I think that would be a much better setting for them to do that same thing, because it is good sitting down and talking, but how you're going to show that conversation to the world. And it's not like Charlie's going to show the arguments that he lost. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm sure he was brilliant. You got it hands down. He was so intelligent when it came to the religion and politics and the history of our country. He had such passion for it. But even him, he's fallible. He could have lost some, like, show that, make it fair on both sides, and then they don't feel like they're just being made fun of and attacked all the time.
Well, and I think one of the good things about holding those events on campuses was that you do have, I'm not a college kid, so I wasn't on campus watching those events. I went to a few TPUSA events. I thought Charlie was an incredibly intelligent, insightful guy. But I think when you have those campus events, you do have all those people congregated, sometimes thousands of these young students, and they get to hear the whole debate. Yeah. And there's oohs and ahs on both sides. And there's obviously people trying to shout him down and tell him he's a fascist and all those kind of things. And I think one of the most tragic things about his assassination was just that you lose this voice for reason. Mm-hmm. This person who's at least trying to have, even though it's flawed, the format maybe of it and the way it shows up on social media, but he's at least trying to present a format and say, we can do this. We can have these debates. Mm-hmm. And one of the most interesting things to me about like the last election, for example, was you had President Trump went on Joe Rogan's podcast and Joe gave a platform for Kamala Harris to come on too, but she refused to come on unless her creative team had edits and they wanted Joe to go to them and they wanted all these stipulations put in place. Mm-hmm. But he really presented like this very fair and balanced format. He's like, we have an unedited, unscripted format where you'll have 2 hours, you sit down with me and we just have a conversation about the issues. And I really think her team, I don't like Kamala Harris at all, but I really think her team missed an opportunity by saying, we're not going to do this. Yeah. And Trump's team was like, yep, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And I think for better or worse, his interview wasn't perfect. He said some things that people disagreed with, but you have this platform to say, here are my ideas, unedited and unabridged. Like them if you like them, don't if you don't. Give me feedback. Let me know what you think. And I think that's the kind of format that really in the large public conversation we're missing. Yeah.
And it's a big audience too.
It's a huge audience.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to be surrounded by people making noise, and cheering whenever it's your side and booing when it's their side. Yeah.
Although if the next time I'm on this show, if we could have like a cheering section, it's just like every time I posit a good idea, they're like, yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to have somebody from the other side that really believes all of this stuff and have like a serious conversation, and not because I'm here to attack them or show them up with, I know more than you do and blah, blah, blah. I'm just really curious to see like, what is going on in your brain? Why do you think this is okay?
Help me understand why you think this.
Because how are we supposed to find a common ground in the middle if we don't understand each other at all?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. No, for sure. In fact, bringing it back to like Community First Project, one of the things that I never understood, whatever you think about the things that are going on in this country, why would you give police officers less training?
Yeah.
Why would you defund the police? If you disagree with the way that they're doing things, train them better.
Yeah.
Give them a better way to do it. Give them other resources. Give them additional input and feedback. But one of the things that always perplexed me was like, well, let's take away the resources that we disagree with the way they're doing business. Let's take away all the stuff that they already have. And you're like, what are you going to do instead of that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's always been fascinating to me.
Back to the community. So, one of the big topics we try to talk about on here a lot is like TBI and PTSD, right? Because there's a lot of guys out there that are struggling, and team guys are big, tough guys, and they don't want to admit that, they have something going on mentally, because they don't want to show any weakness. And we understand. We come from that. But it's ever present.
Sure.
And there's guys committing suicide every day in this country. So not necessarily our community, but as a whole in the military, guys are getting their brains rocked on a constant, like whether it's breaching or just riding around in a vehicle, fucking banging your head on a fucking, RG-33 or whatever. It's like, can you speak on any of this? Like, you were in them much longer than me. I got out after 8, and I could see TBI symptoms in myself and other guys around me, and then especially in the older guys. But I'm curious to have your thoughts, having had a much longer career.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I come from a background where my father's a mental health professional. He's a clinical neuropsychologist, been in private practice for 45 years, and my brother has now taken over the practice, so he's a psychologist as well. And then my fiance works in the realm of psychedelic therapies for veterans and first responders suffering from PTSD. So she works in that. I don't know if you've seen the new documentary with Marcus Capone and
I watched part of it.
Waves and War. So I know Marcus a little bit. I know Matty Roberts real well. I know DJ.
I just had Trevor Millar on the podcast.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, about a month ago. I'd say.
Very cool.
Yeah, he talked about Ambio and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So so my fiance has a company called Being True to You, and they do integration coaching, prep and integration for people going through psychedelic therapies. So I get to see all of those things. Number one, from the mental health perspective of my father being in private practice and seeing mental health and getting to hear about mental health as I'm growing up, as I'm a kid, I'm learning about mental health, and then getting to kind of bounce ideas off him as I would come home from these deployments, as I would go through these different experiences. And certainly TBI had a big part in all of that. And then also getting to see guys that would get out of the teams after their careers. And, like I said, I just retired a year and a half ago, but watching guys get out who sometimes you would see those guys and you would just think that guy's a top performer. That guy's totally successful. He's no problems with that guy. And then learning that guy had some internal struggles that were going on that you had no idea about. And then also some guys that would get out that you're like, that guy's really not doing well. He's self-medicating, booze and pills and all these different things. And you're thinking, this guy's, I've seen how this story ends.
Yeah.
And then watching those guys and then sometimes seeing them go through either mental health counseling or psychedelic therapies or a combination of the two, and seeing the transformative benefits of going through some of those things. And I legitimately have watched friends of mine come back from what I would have thought was the precipice of self-harm or the precipice of suicide, come back from those kind of things and going through some of these different experiences like Ambio or, Ibogaine, ayahuasca, psilocybin, whatever it is, in some of these different clinics, like the Mission Within down in Mexico, what like Marcus and DJ and Matt went through. And being fascinated by the recovery from all those kind of things. And then sort of like the application of, I haven't done any of that stuff, but just sort of thinking through my own mental health journey of where I was at when I came in, where I was at through my progression throughout the teams, going through, I would say, definitely some PTSD and some pretty severe depression, I think, in the immediate aftermath of getting divorced and getting injured and my recovery and all those kind of things. And then just like the upswing of like being able to get back to work, getting back to a mission, getting back to doing the job that I believed in, and being able to bounce those ideas off people who live and work in that environment. People like my father and my brother, and saying, when you look at me now, having known me my whole life, am I fucked up? Am I like, do I seem like a different person than I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Am I okay? And because you have your own introspective insights into what you think and what you feel and these different things. And I went up to, Bethesda and did a month inpatient program called NICO. And, they do a number of different things. They do a sleep study. They do a mental health evaluation. They put you through this high-powered MRI that does this really intense scan of your brain to look for neural tissue damage and scar tissue on your brain that would be the result of a TBI or indicative of something like chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, going through those things and getting the results of those kind of things and kind of seeing where I'm at from a physiological perspective, but then also like trying to do a self-assessment of like, how do I feel? Am I okay? And I've never been the kind of person who was like, no booze, no pills, no suicidal ideation. But there are days when I'm like, it's hard to get out of bed. You know, you don't feel like you have the same vigor to do the things that you wanted to do, or you're like, is this just because I'm 46 years old, or is this because I might be like a little bit depressed about some things? And so I think two things. Number one, I think it's good to have a community of people who are open to talking about it, which I think the SEAL teams are sort of like the forefront, like the forerunner on that. I feel like we're probably 10 years ahead of like law enforcement and first responders who are still very trepidatious about talking about those things. Having friends in that community who have gone through some of those therapies, who are able to say, I was in a bad situation. I was self-medicating. I was depressed. I was potentially like suicidal. And I went through some of these different therapies, or I went through some of these different things that you're going through. And then also just having a community of people who are supportive of you continuing a mission that makes you feel valuable, right? Whether that's hosting a podcast that gets a good message out there about what team guys and other people are doing, or whether it's like training law enforcement to feel like you're still making a valuable contribution to society.
Yeah.
And just being able to like get with other veterans and be like, hey, what you're doing and the fact that you still exist and the fact that you still have a mission and the fact you're still a part of this community, it still fucking matters. Like you still matter. Like we still care about you. And I think a lot of what happens is, you know, you mix TBI and PTSD with the fact that guys get out of the military. And I don't know what your experience was like, but a lot of guys get out and that like their identity goes with their military career. And so they get out and they fall off this cliff of like, who am I? Like, what am I doing now? And does it even matter? And so I think you mix those things and you have guys who are already a little bit traumatized, and then they're out and now they don't have a mission, and now they don't feel included, and they don't feel like they have a community, and they don't feel like what they're doing makes a difference. And I think that's a caustic mix of negativity.
Yeah, when I got out, I definitely, because like you said, you're leaving your community. It's like a family over there, and you feel like you're out off the reservation and you're on your own. And I do wish I wish there was a connection, or there's some sort of program as you're getting out to where you kind of like you get that line to the network of wherever you're moving. Right. I wish there was more effort made in that aspect where, hey, where you're getting out of the military. Cool. Thank you for your service. Where are you moving to? Okay. You're moving to Austin, Texas. Boom. Here's 50 fucking names of like former frogmen from our community and support personnel that are in that area. Yeah. I'm going to plug you in. Here's the signals. Here's the, everything that you need to get off on the right foot. But it is kind of like, once you're done, it's like, all right, they shut the door as you're walking out of the prison, it's just like, good luck. And that's how I kind of felt. And then, and then you have guys that, it is weird when you're with the same guys in the same platoons and the community. And even though most of us don't like, big military telling us what to do and all this stuff, you kind of, it's like you get used to it after a while. And when it's not there, it's like,
you're in free fall.
Yeah.
You're like,
So you could kind of see how these guys are like, I'm free to drink. I'm free to smoke pot. I'm free to, do whatever I want, and so.
Which can be good or bad. That freedom for some people is very liberating. Yeah. And for other people, it just feels like they're in free fall. Like there's no support structure, there's no network, and nobody cares.
Yep. So it took me a while too. And you have the whole feeling of like, I left the teams, I ostracized myself. Yeah. And I'm ashamed because I didn't do a full career, or whatever it is. And you realize that's nothing. Then you find all these people and like, oh, you got out at 4 years. Oh, you got out at 6. And, it's just like.
Most people don't do a full career.
Yeah. It's, so. It's just interesting, and it's interesting to hear different perspectives and like what other people have used. And I know you said you had a great, support circle in your life, thankfully, that was able to help you through some of these processes where you didn't have to take psychedelics or anything like that. So that's a blessing. Like, kudos to your family for being there for you. But a lot of these guys, they don't have that structure. They don't have that. And, like these psychedelic treatments, the ayahuasca ceremonies, the 5-MeO, DMT,
Yep.
the psilocybin, you can microdose. There's so many options out there. I just started doing hyperbaric chambers.
I've heard great things about that too.
I did my 6th session this morning. I'm shooting for 80 because
Is that like a local place that you go to here?
yeah, it's at Ways to Well.
Oh, very cool.
The same guy that Brigham or
Yeah.
Joe gets his stem
Yeah.
cells and everything from. Same guy, great guy, Brigham Bueller. Awesome facility, awesome staff. Like they
Yep.
treat you like family.
Yeah.
So I go there as many times as I can fit into my week, and it's just for like an hour sitting in a chamber,
Yep.
catch up on emails, and then I do red light bed therapy.
Yep.
But yeah, I recommend any of these things that can make you feel better. I started taking zeolite. It's like an all natural compound.
Yeah.
It's like more of like a mineral water substance that it basically, once you take it, it goes down to the molecular level of your body, and it binds to anything that's in your system that doesn't belong there. So like any sort of
very
heavy
cool.
metals that
Yeah,
might be
so
in
it's
your
like a
body,
detox.
any molds, toxins,
Yeah.
radioactive substances.
So what's it called? Zeolite?
Well, the compound is called zeolite, but the company I get it from is called Masterpiece. It's like Peace, Masterpiece.
Masterpiece. Got
Yeah,
it.
Masterpiece. And they have the best on the market. And
Interesting.
I've been taking this for going on 4 weeks. After 2 weeks, dude, I started noticing the craziest dreams. And since the military, I never remember my dreams.
Yeah.
And if I do dream, it always felt like short and like it would get interrupted.
Yep.
And then I would start REM and then it gets cut out and it's shitty sleep. Now, like I'll go to bed, I'm usually editing really late until midnight or 1. I'll fall asleep and I'll have a full REM cycle that feels like it's 4 or 5 hours, like the longest dream ever.
Yeah.
And then I'll wake up for whatever reason, because I guess when the dream finishes, it's
Yeah.
usually a crazy ending that wakes you up, and it's been 1 hour.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like
Yeah.
I haven't. Maybe when I was a little kid, I experienced
Check this
this.
stuff out.
Yeah. I know a guy. I'll hook you up. But I'm telling you, man, try this stuff, because if there's one thing that we can all kind of like a common ground, we all get shitty sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So like right after as I was getting out of the Navy, I went through a program started by a guy named Alex Oliver. Shout out to VHP. It's called Virginia High Performance, but he's a former SEAL. Started this company, VHP, specifically to treat former special operators and former NSW personnel as they're coming out, as they're making their transition. And it's a whole body, like mental wellness, but a lot of it is physical wellness. So it's like, they put you on a nutritional program. They get you, 2 workouts a day. You're working with a coach. You have like proper supplementation, all these different kind of things. But one of the things that they talk about, and anybody you ever hear talk about human optimization, that keyword, human optimization, they talk about sleep first. If you're not getting 8 hours of productive, recuperative sleep, then nothing else that you do is really going to cover for that.
Exactly.
No amount of working out, no amount of red light bed, no amount of like float tanks, or all of those things are great. They're phenomenal. Supplementation, creatine, all those things. But if you're not getting 8 hours, like that's your foundational, that's like your building block of everything else that you do. And so at VHP, they're very conscientious about making sure that you're getting the right, melatonin and GABA and the proper supplementation that's going to give you the most restorative sleep that you can get, and making sure that, they give you an Oura ring to wear, which I don't have on today, but Oura ring to track your sleep. And so when you go in to do your first workout of the day, they get your Oura ring data that says you slept for this long. This is your recovery on a scale of 1 to 100. This is where you're at recovery wise. And then they sort of determine the intensity of your workout for that day based on your Oura ring sleep data. So it's all very scientific. VHP has done a tremendous job with that community.
I need to get one of those rings.
But it's, it's one of those resources that's like the more the data driven that you can be, the more it's like, because when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I slept well. But if I have like the Oura ring that's monitoring my heart rate variability and my resting heart rate and my hours of sleep and how long did it take me to fall asleep and how restorative was my sleep, then I really know, like, am I doing the right things that are making me successful day in and day out from a foundational sleep perspective? And I think those kind of things, we as team guys tend to be very driven towards that idea of like optimizing whatever we're doing. And whether that's like somebody who's microdosing with psilocybin or somebody who's just seeking 8 hours of productive sleep, I think all of those things then build on each other. And when you're like, if you're not doing the things that are foundational, then don't focus so much on like, if you're not getting good sleep and good nutrition, don't think about microdosing. Don't think about all your supplementation. Don't think about all those other things. Like focus on doing the things that are foundational first,
Right.
and then build on those building blocks. And I love red light therapy. I love float tanks, cryo, supplementation, all that kind of stuff I feel like is important, but it's like foundationally, like I need to go to bed at 9:30 and wake up at 6:30 or whatever, whatever your schedule
Yeah,
is.
which is the teams that throws your sleep schedule all out of whack because you don't need sleep in the teams.
That's
Nobody
right.
sleeps.
That's
Stop
right.
sleeping. Stop caring about sleep. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. Or then you
And-
go overseas and you're on a vampire hours and you're
Yeah.
like going out on an op at 11 o'clock and getting back at 4 a.m.
It's like
And-
sleeping
yeah.
all day, staying up all night, but now fast forward, we're adults and like, holy fuck, sleep is super important for your
important.
health and your brain,
And your mental health.
right? And so you might even get 8 hours of sleep, but if it's not full REM cycles, you're basically daydreaming. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It's not you're not getting like what you need for your brain to recover. And
100%.
when you're getting rocked by explosive concussive blasts, okay, your brain needs time to recover. So I definitely I implore people like start focusing on your sleep. That is like the trifecta, right? Mentally healthy, physically healthy, but you need sleep.
You need
That's
sleep.
that's where you're going to
Yep.
recover, and that's where
Yep.
you're not going to go crazy at the end of the day.
And there's so much research and so much data that talks about people who are suffering from, PTSD, people who are suffering from depression, how that ties into chronic pain, and how all of those things are related back to not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
If you get enough sleep, it reduces your chronic pain, which can reduce your depression. And it's like
Exactly.
that trifecta, but like sleep is so important. And I know it's something that we talk about that sounds super like banal, right? Oh, sleep 8 hours, whatever. But it's like, as somebody who spent the last 22 years depriving myself of copious amounts of sleep,
yeah.
it's really important.
It's super important. And
Yeah.
and if you have anything out there that's working for you, as my old chief used to say, do not keep that a Victoria's Secret and share that shit with
Yeah.
the rest of us, because a lot of guys, they won't tell you, but they're fucking struggling with sleep.
Yeah.
And it's so important to us. So I got two last quick questions for
Shoot.
you, and then I'm going to wrap this.
Okay.
You ever think about taking office?
The idea has come up. I wouldn't say it's something that I've like actually entertained. But
I think you would make a great candidate.
I think there's, I see people, and this is sort of the long form answer to your question. I think there are people that I see like Eli Crane and some of these people, Ryan Zinke, people that I worked with in the teams, people that I knew who have taken office to make a difference. And I think it's not that those people sought out office because they wanted power, which is, I think, the antithesis of the people who should be in power, or the people who want power should be your first indication that you shouldn't have power.
Right.
But guys that come from the teams who are public servants, who are like, you know what? Here's a problem that needs to get fixed, and the best way for me to fix it is from the inside. And so they take office. And I think was it Morgan Luttrell, I think, ran for office in Texas too. Those guys going in and making a difference. I think that's inspirational. That's motivational. I think it would take a lot for me to want to run for office. Number one, because it would mean stepping away from my position as director of operations of Community First Project, which is a mission that I still love. I'm still passionate about.
Yeah.
But never say never.
Yeah. If you were king for a day, what would you fix in this country first?
I think, again, we're talking about foundationally. I think if I was king for a day, I would try to implement some system that would help people realize how great of a country we live in. For all of our political discourse and disagreements, for all the things that aren't perfect about this country, go live anywhere else. Look at the rest of the world. Look at how everything else is everywhere else. Come back to the States and tell me that we don't live in the greatest nation in human history, because we do.
Yeah.
And from an opportunity standpoint, from the standpoint of like we take care of our citizens, from the standpoint of we are historically or have been a patriotic nation, from the fact that we have not once but twice freed the world from tyranny and 2 world wars, and the fact that we are, I believe, divinely inspired. Our nation is a nation divinely inspired of God, that our foundation of our country was divinely inspired. And I just think that if we could go to great lengths to help our young people, to help the people who are going through school, to help the people who are in college, instead of hating our country, try to embrace and love our country. And if you really do love it, even if you want to complain about the things that are wrong, and there are things that are broken in our system, but instead of hating and griping about it, try to fix it. Be an outside the box thinker, identify a problem and go try to fix it, instead of just complaining about it and saying the other side is fascist and I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. or it's off with your heads.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was king for the day.
Yeah, exactly. Just execute everybody else.
There'd be a lot of heads on the ground.
No, yeah. So I think that's it. Is find ways to help people, in your immediate circle, whether that's your friends, your family, the people that, if you're in college, people you go to school with, find ways to help people remember that we do live in a nation that's truly blessed.
Awesome, brother. Well, we're wrapped up here. Why don't you, anything you need to plug, any foundations, anything you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think there's so much ground that we covered. I've been truly fortunate to work with so many great organizations, from the SEAL teams to VHP to, I work with Boot Campaign as a nonprofit that I work with, All Secure Foundation is a nonprofit that I work with, Community First Project. Go to c1p.org, check it out, check out our mission, who we are, support your local law enforcement, support national law enforcement. The men in blue and women in blue are out there really working their butts off to make our community safe. And so we at C1P are really trying to do our best to support that mission.
And where can people find you, your personal socials?
So I'm on Instagram at KGUS245, and that's pretty much the only social media I have. You can find me on LinkedIn at my name, Karl Gustavson. And if you see me out in public, it's just Gus.
Karl G, thank you for coming on my podcast.
That's it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother.
Great to be here.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?